CD Memorial Day. Difference. You had asked me between 18 and 19.
I have to remember the question.
Right. That's Grand Kennedy. I didn't say Grand Kennedy. I told my grandson, I have to write this down before I get it. I said, well, I didn't like that. I told my grandson, 3 questions. Yes, I remember. And the first one. And I got the first 2. And I said, I'm going back.
Terry, does this mic work?
Mike works.
Does it work?
Works.
Okay, thanks.
You want this one?
I don't know if I could reach that.
You don't touch it, you just talk.
You just talk? I don't hear you.
It picks up here. Say hello.
Hello?
Louder.
Hello?
There you go. You want this one?
Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
floats your boat. Whatever makes you happy.
How you doing?
I'm okay.
So you got a nice stand going there, girl.
There you go.
for
You
you.
can sing now.
Hey, you want to get him up? You ready? Everybody ready? Ken, are you ready?
Yes, Mayor. Would all the veterans
Good
please
evening,
stand?
everyone. I want to call the meeting to order. At this time, I'm going to have Airman Ken Kelly lead us, say a short prayer and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Grant us the wisdom to make those decisions that are in the best interest of all our residents. May the Heavenly Father of us all bless those who have given the ultimate sacrifice and service to our nation, and may He watch over those now guarding the gates of freedom. Ed?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Present arms. I pledge
Ken, if you give us, I got to open the meeting. Terry, statement of publication?
Yes, Mayor, take notice that this regular meeting of the Mayor and Borough Council being held on this 22nd day of July 2019 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter
call.
231, Public Law 1975. Councilpersons Buchanan, Delina. Enriquez. Kilpatrick. McGill. Novak. Here.
We're going to do the approval of minutes and then, who is sitting in for the approval of minutes? Oh, that'd be Mary. Mary,
Correct.
if you would, approval of minutes.
Motion to approve the minutes as listed on the agenda?
Second.
Roll call.
Councilpersons Novak.
Yes.
Delina.
Yes.
Enriquez.
Yes.
Kilpatrick. Yes. McGill.
At this time, I'm going to have Ken Kelly, member of Veterans Alliance, along with Rich Kosmeski, Vietnam War veteran, former commander of the VFW. Ken, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, there'll be several people speaking tonight. We'll do it briefly, but thoroughly. And I've also had a meeting with the borough attorney and the attorney for Riverton just now. And it appears as though our issues with the paragraph and wording, et cetera, have been rectified. However, we're still going to be working on that. But we have the veterans here, so we just wanted to express our opinion on what transpired here, as we're very unhappy with it. Mr. Mayor and members of the governing body, Thank you for your consideration in this matter, which is of paramount importance to the military veterans of our community. Recently, we have been aware, by chance, that a new borough ordinance, 458-19, is up for final reading and adoption at tonight's meeting. The veterans of our community are outraged and disgusted that neither Sarah nor the Borough Council sought input for this ordinance change with the Veterans Alliance. There is no valid reason for the veterans to have been slighted. Ordinance 458-19 allows for the developer, with Sarah's approval, to assign street names at will for branding purposes. This is unacceptable. About 2 months ago, Mayor O'Brien asked me if I would meet with Mr. Kevin Polston, project executive for Riverton. After the meeting and a lengthy conversation, I requested that we meet again with the members of the Veterans Alliance in attendance. We met again on 2 subsequent occasions with Alliance members of the Veterans of Foreign Wars and the American Legion in attendance. Last week on Tuesday, 7/16/19, we met with Mr. Bolston and Mr. Mark Feta, the Senior Vice President of Development for Riverton. The meeting progressed with both sides expressing views on the situation. The meeting ended amicably. At about 9 p.m. on 7/16/19, I received an email from Mr. Polston outlining the items discussed. They are as follows. 1, developer would assign names to primary roads. 2, the naming of Peter Fisher Boulevard will remain as is. 3, the east-west roads on parcel C would be laid out in a numerical grid, for example, 1st Avenue, 2nd Avenue. Honorary street names and the names of Silver Star recipients would be included under proposed avenue signs. The roads in residential neighborhoods would be named for veterans as chosen by the Veterans Alliance and the developer. The waterfront walkway would be a forum for recognition of Sayreville veterans and the history of our participation in all conflicts and wars. The Alliance requests that paragraph 7 of the proposed ordinance 458-19 not be voted on at this meeting, and that the developer and the Veterans Alliance will have input on the rewording of this paragraph to the approval of all. Further, the Veterans Alliance praises and commends Riverton, Mr. Polston, and Mr. Feta for their efforts in this matter. The Alliance looks forward to meeting with them again at their earliest convenience. With over 7 decades of service to our community, our veterans feel slighted in this matter. And we, the U.S. military veterans of the borough, have served our nation and our citizens from World War II to the present. We, during our time in service, have provided for and ensured the peace and freedoms we now enjoy. Do not disregard or bypass us now or in the future, for we have secured the right to be here and be heard, and to have fair representation. We have earned it. Thank you.
Rich Kosmeski?
Yeah, I'm Rich Kosmowski, Wilson Avenue, President Park section of the borough. 4th generation son of Sayreville immigrants, and 3 more generations following behind me. I've served as co-chairman of the Sayreville Veterans Alliance for more than 20 years, along with Ken Kelly. In the early stages of the Veterans Alliance, we had elected officials who were unequivocally supporters of the Veterans Alliance and our efforts to support all veterans. They seen the need to recognize the sacrifices of our veterans and what they did to protect not only our country, but the many other countries where people were forced to live under communism, fascism, and Nazism. These veterans gave so much of themselves that those of you who have never served in the military can't even imagine what we went through. Yes, you can say you understand, but until you wear our boots, you can never truly understand what we went through. what we accomplished, and the extenuating circumstances in doing so. Serving on the Veterans Alliance, Ken and I were charged with the dedication of numerous parks, ball fields, and monuments named in honor of our local heroes. An ordinance passed by our veteran-friendly mayor and council years ago was to name all new streets in the borough after our veterans. You will notice that those streets, most recently in Town Lake, Lemire, and Patriots Hill. The Veterans Alliance worked diligently to formalize a list of several families that had multiple family members serving in the wars and conflicts that our country was involved in. It took 2 years of documentation, investigation, and certification to come up with the final list of families having a minimum of 4 members who served in the military. With full support of the mayor and council at that time, the veterans list was given to the tax assessor to use at his discretion in selecting streets which names are to be used on, which veterans' names are to be used on those streets. The Veterans Alliance only provided the documentation of names. Unfortunately, some of these names were long Polish names. But these were the families that immigrated to the United States from Europe. These are the families that gave their sons and daughters to the military to utilize them as they seen fit. These are the families that lost sons and daughters, fathers, uncles, brothers, and sisters to the ravages of war. All these servile veterans gave of themselves so that you can enjoy the freedoms of what your country is built upon. Unfortunately, some of their names were long. Yes, longer than such 3-letter street names as Elm, Oak, or Ash. And yes, it may take you a few attempts before you can pronounce that Polish name correctly. But if that long and difficult name was able to fit on a military dog tag, it sure as hell should be able to fit on a street sign. People living on these streets should feel proud that they are living on a street named after a local hero. That veteran gave more of himself in defense of this country than you'll ever know. Now here in 2019, many years since that ordinance was adopted, how soon we forget. Yes, how soon we forget the history of our community and the sacrifices of our veterans. It is a rich history, but once we lose that history, it is gone and forgotten. Currently, there are attempts to change the ordinance of naming streets after our local vets. Are we going to allow the outside contractors, planners, and builders who have no roots in our community dictate to you, the council, and to us, the veterans? Are you, the elected officials of our community, going to bend backwards to the threatening tactics from outsiders? Elected officials, wake up and stand your ground. The veterans of this community will still be here when they are long gone. If anyone wants to come into our community and build projects, let them abide by our rules and ordinances. Why should we be changing what we have built upon for years just to accommodate others? I heard you not to change the ordinance and give Sarah the authority to name streets, now or in the future, just to accommodate projects by outside contractors. If you haven't entered the Borough Hall using the front entrance because the parking is in the rear and it's more convenient, I invite you to step into that hallway. I want you to look at those 2,000 plus names on our honor roll. Each name was a servile homeboy or girl, a local kid, grew up in our town, played in our parks, on our streets, went to our schools, and then went to war when our country called. If you weren't born and raised in Servile or had roots established in our community, you may find it difficult to grasp the importance of how the naming of streets for veterans and how important that is to us. Can you honestly say to yourselves, the hell with the veterans, and that you will change that ordinance despite our concerns here tonight? Are you going to snub the veterans and allow Sarah, who should have no input in naming the streets in Servile, and allow them to have the authority over veterans? Can you honestly tell your war heroes that you favor naming the new streets with alluring names rather than naming them after our local Silver Star recipients? The Veterans Alliance was given the privilege of naming streets after local veterans and their military families by the concerned borough officials at that time, some of which were veterans themselves. I thank you for your time, listening to our concerns, and we are looking for a favorable decision to kill this proposed change once and for all.
Ed Streck, 58 Nickel Avenue, Sayreville. Lifelong resident of Sayreville, past commander of American Legion Post 11, and currently captain of the American Legion Post 11 Honor Guard. Some of you currently sitting on the council may not realize the sacrifices that were made by our veterans. Several veterans during World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam. Some of you were too young to understand that, or you possibly were not born yet in 1918. World War I. 350 men answered the call to arms. 11 were killed in action, and I can name them all. Several population at the time was only 17,000 residents, a town of 14 square miles. World War II, 1,500 men and women answered the call to arms. 48 killed in action, and I can name all of them also. Korea, one Sayreville resident was killed in action. Woody Hauserman. Woody Hauserman wrote a letter to his parents and stated how happy he was to be coming home. The war was going to end. He was killed in action on the last day of the war. Woody Hauserman. There is a dedication at the Sayreville soccer fields in honor of Woody Hauserman. Vietnam. Vietnam had 7 Sayreville residents killed in action. Out of 200 residents of Sayreville that answered the call to duty for a political war. We must also remember the Silver Star recipients. They sort of are a forgotten group of veterans. There are 9 of them, and I'm going to name them. Edwin Caladre, Lawrence B. Radican, Frank S. Pahala, Joseph G.I. Joe Tarowski, John Sosnovich, Walter Suchowicki, Francis S. Kukulski, Maurice Ferguson. Maurice Ferguson received the Silver Star with an oak leaf custard. That means that he received 2 Silver Stars. Maurice Ferguson and Vietnam veteran James Novak. We must never forget these veterans. They're part of history, and I feel they should remain part of history. They will be forgotten. They will be forgotten if we don't take care of these veterans, some of who paid the ultimate price for our freedom. Sayreville Veterans Alliance should be commended. They recognize all the veterans that were killed in action, as you see with the signs around town. This ordinance, I suggest that Sarah be deleted from the street name part of the ordinance, and the Saraville Veterans Alliance be added along with the tax assessor. I thank you for your listening to what I have to say, and may God bless all our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I like the street. Okay, Ray.
Councilman's good.
Come on up, Ray. Ray, be nice.
Good evening. Mr. Mayor, members of the governing body, professionals, I think most of you know me. Mike McEnone. I reside at 29 Zaleski Drive, named after Chester Zaleski, killed in action in World War II. When I left my block and made a left turn, I turned on the Creamer Drive, named after William Creamer, killed in action in World War II. Then to get into the building, I turned into the parking lot, which is named Purple Heart Way, Silver Star Drive. The reason I mention these things is that I spent 23 years on active duty. And when I moved to Saraville, I was still active duty. And I moved to Saraville because it was a veteran-friendly town. We have a very active VFW and American Legion. I met some of the guys before I even bought a house here. And when I have my military buddies that I was stationed with visit me, they compliment the signs in the streets, and they said they wish that their town would do the same. We have several parks, as you know, named after veterans, and all three of my daughters graduated from Saraville War Memorial High School. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I don't have much to say about it. I don't believe anybody up here, I know all of you, are anti-veteran, or going to do anything that's going to be anti-veteran, but this ordinance came up, and I think from a political perspective, it's never wise politically to do anything that may be perceived to be against veterans. And I would just like to throw that out. I appreciate your time and consideration, and again, I believe Saraville is a veteran-friendly town, and I hope it always will be. Thank you.
Wait a minute, Ken, Ray.
Yeah, I thought he was in the back.
Good evening. I'm not a scheduled speaker, and I don't have a half-an-hour speech. But I'd just like to clarify a couple of things. Number one, congratulations on the Saraville Alliance for putting everything together, but they weren't the only ones. I was involved in that too. Also, when it was said that when you come in the front door, you see all the names of all the veterans. That's not true either, because in the borough of Saraville, in the state, the people's state of New Jersey, they don't recognize veterans of non-times of war, which I dare anybody, including Murphy, to tell me when there wasn't a war. There's always a war someplace. I myself was not in any of those wars on the wall, but I'm a member of the VFW, so I served in a war zone. But my zone isn't in it. So that's one beef I got. The other thing is, and I sat here and I see no veterans at that table. Oh, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon. We must have veterans sitting here. Now, in this audience right here, you got Kenny Kelly, you got Stanley Drawl, you got myself. We all sat here because you must have a veteran sitting at the did to not have this happen, or at least give an input. But a lot of people don't know what it is to be a veteran. Now, I sat here a few times, 2 years, as a councilman, and I've seen streets. After this ordinance was passed, I've seen streets named after people who shouldn't have been named, but because of political interest, and a couple parks were named after non-veterans. Well, hell, if we're going to do that, you know, let's get a grip on things. The other thing I'd like to say before I say goodnight is I see in the audience there's a couple people that will be running in November for your job. I would like to see right now, before they are elected, either end of the scale, what their views are about veterans and naming the streets after veterans. And I'm on a personal note. Like they said here, we're down to families with four names on it, families that serve. Well, my wife, her family, had 3 retirees from the Navy and one heroic guy who was in the Army World War II. Now, since we're down to 4 names, it would be a good thing, before they named the street after a non-veteran, it'd be nice to honor my wife who just passed away, name the street after her family. Now, I don't want to jump ahead of anybody. I'll wait my turn, but I will not wait behind a non-vet. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ray. Stanley?
Stanley Droll, 121 Bezette Street. As Ray said, I sat up here for a while as a councilman, so I was kind of surprised when this came up because the whole time I sat here for 8 years or 6 years, I don't think this ever would have happened. We would have talked about it before it came up and kind of hidden. But that's a gone thing. I just want to explain, maybe some people don't understand why some of us are upset. I grew up here in Sayreville after World War II in the 1950s. I joined the Army at 18, right at the end of Vietnam, when it was very unpopular to join the military. I was laughed at from some people in high school, saying you're pretty stupid to join the military, stuff like that. But I didn't care about what the kids said because I thought all the heroes I grew up with in my neighborhood, my school teachers. Most of us that went to Sayreville High School, most of our teachers were veterans of World War II. One of them was at Iwo Jima. And I never thought my family was anything different than everybody else's because we all suffered the same way. Between my parents, there were 8 boys, 4 on each side. Of the 8, 7 of them served in the military. In World War II, 2 were wounded seriously. And although the KIAs have been done for those multi-generational families, I'll give you an example. My Uncle Eddie grew up right by St. Stan's. He was shot with a head wound in Italy. He never recovered fully. He lived with my grandmother and eventually died at a relatively young age. And because of that, he's not a KIA, but he never returned to normal after the war because of that injury. And my family was no different than others. And last thing I'm going to say about these street names, I don't care how long the name was. You know, a lot of those Polish immigrants that we grew up with, I knew some of those families. Some of those guys that went to World War II, because we used to hear it in the family stories or in the neighborhood. Some of those guys went to boot camp and couldn't speak English. And they still fought for America and died. We hear all this about immigrants. Well, what's wrong with the Polish immigrants? I'll tell you what, I had a 190-man battery in the Army as an artillery officer, and I had a 400-something man battalion, and I had names of every ethnic group you can think of, and somehow I learned how to spell every name on that name tag. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, having been a veteran. I never had a problem with any of those names. Some of those names wouldn't even fit on the dog tags, so the military cut it short. But I knew the whole name. And so did every officer and NCO in that battalion, in that battery, so I don't buy the street name thing at all. Tough luck, spell the name, I could do it, and so could everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank, you wanted to speak? Frank, go ahead. I'm hearing from veterans right now, then I'm going to hear from the attorney, and that will conclude this portion. Anyone from the public who wishes to comment on this can comment further on in the meeting, but the veterans had asked that I do it this way. And I'm in 100% agreement.
Frank Terzino, 32 Canal Street, Ortown. Thank you for giving us the time. We appreciate it. In August 1946, the borough presented veterans with this little case. And this was my uncle's, those medals and where he was. And the point I want to make here today is, I just want to read this off real quick. Sergeant Joe Zacek, World War II Army, Purple Heart recipient, Iwo Jima, Guam. Edward Zacek, World War II Army, Purple Heart, Germany. Sam Zacek, World War II Army, Hawaii, Saipan. Stanley Zacek, World War II Army, France, Medical Group. Ray Zacek, Army, stateside. Joe Bortzi, Sr., Army, Germany and Japan. Alfred Zacek, Korea. Joe Mortsey Jr., Korea, Vietnam, Army, lost his battle to Agent Orange. John Malkowitz, World War II, Army, Japan. Ray Jr., Vietnam, Navy. Steve Zaleski, Vietnam, Germany, in the Army. My father, Army, in Germany. And myself, Air Force, Cold War veteran. These are the people we're up here to fight for, and many thousands and probably millions more. So we cannot disservice these men. Luckily, all my uncles came home from World War II with a lot of prayers. We just lost my one cousin for Agent Orange, but they all stood up, left their jobs, and dropped everything and gave it hell. So we would appreciate if you keep them on the table today.
Thank you, Frank. Are there any veterans who would also like to speak? Commander? Men and women of the United States service, anyone? That being said, I'm going to ask the counselor to come up.
Mayor, may I just say something really brief?
I just wanted to say, I was on the council when we worked to make sure all
Mary,
those
we
names.
just take.
I just wanted to say it was
Yeah,
Ray was the driving force at the time.
I understand. And I'm not taking anything against Ray, but let's just do it in the order that the veterans asked that I do it in.
Well, thank you, Mayor and Council. Just for the record and for those at home, my name is Jennifer Phillips Smith. I'm an attorney with Gibbons PC, and I am here tonight on behalf of Sayreville Seaport Associates Urban Renewal LP, which is the designated redeveloper for what is now known as the Riverton Project. We do want to thank all the veterans for coming out tonight. And I'm going to ask Mr. Polston, Kevin Polston, who's our project executive, to speak briefly, as he's had many conversations with people from the Veterans Alliance and would like to comment further.
Thanks, Jen. Excuse me. First of all, I want to apologize to the veterans as a group and individually for anything we as the Riverton team may have done to make you feel slighted in this process. That was not our intention.
Kevin, you need to open the mic.
Sorry, better? Certainly didn't mean to slight anyone. So from myself personally and from our organization, please accept that apology. I also want to thank you, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Szymanski, Mr. Streck, for your stories that you told tonight, but most of all for meeting with us and having an open dialogue about where we might find shared ground for compromise in this situation. It was a very healthy and helpful conversation, and I appreciate your time and your commitment to try to find a framework that we can all work with. And along those lines, Mr. Kelly shared some bullet points that we came up with at the meeting, things we found common ground on. And for us, this is a framework not to dismiss veterans, quite the contrary. On behalf of the entire Riverton team, we appreciate the service and the sacrifice of the Sayreville veterans. In fact, part of this came from the idea of what can we do beyond street signs that would acknowledge the service and sacrifice of the Sayreville families, the Sayreville veterans and their families. And Mr. Streck mentioned two things specifically that we also share an interest in finding a way to honor those that were killed in action. We also want to find a way to honor those that those brave men who got the Silver Stars, those Sayreville, the Sayreville heroes. We're working on this heroes walk along the water. So I just want to assure you that this is a broader issue for us than names on signs, and I appreciate that the names on signs are very important to the veterans. I don't want to dismiss this. I just want to reiterate that we have a framework for a broader acknowledgement of veterans along the heroes walk, along this walkway that's such a central part of our program. And on behalf of the redeveloper, I'd like to request that this paragraph 7, the veterans street naming portion of the ordinance be stricken so that the balance of the ordinance can move forward and that we can continue our healthy dialogue with representatives of the Veterans Alliance about an alternative means to honor veterans and a structure for the street naming that works for all interested parties.
And if I may, Mayor, it's my understanding that the language that was added will be stricken and the language that existed which says street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough will remain. So the other portions of that, which begin with the tax assessor and end with the certain code section, that is stricken. So the only thing that will remain will be the existing ordinance, which says street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough. So it will continue the way it has been, and that the borough will maintain the list of veterans.
I would make one suggestion, that the names that are supplied by the Veterans Alliance and maintained by the borough, just so there's no misunderstanding going forward.
Mayor, just so that we're clear, the goal is to continue to work with the veterans.
No, do you understand what I just,
I do.
do you have an objection to it?
As a procedural matter, we'll
Do you
work-
have an objection to it?
Not in the long term, but
Okay.
just for this evening, Your Mayor.
I beg your pardon?
Just for this evening, Your Mayor, because what we would like to do is to put back exactly what was there, so that the balance of the ordinance.
Well, let's
can be-
add a little caveat to it, which is this, the names supplied to the borough by the Veterans Alliance, just so there's no loose ends.
I think, Mayor, I think the issue is that it's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Kelly, that the veterans, the list of veterans have always been supplied by your organization. Is that accurate? So, right.
It's a
So
policy, not an ordinance.
there's a policy in place. So I think that the existing language, Mayor, together with the policy, I think will achieve your goal. And it says street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough, and you also have an existing policy that enforces that. So I don't think that you need to change anything. I do think that Mr. Kelly and your organization still will continue to, supply the names to the borough, and the borough will maintain that list.
Go ahead,
There's
Counselor.
actually already a resolution that you've adopted.
Well,
that
before,
will-
I'm running the meeting, Counselor, so I'll take care of that part. Do you have anything else to say?
Only that we ask that you consider adopting the balance of the
Okay.
ordinance.
We're not to this portion yet, out of respect for our veterans and their request to have you speak. I'm going out of order. So, Ken, did you have something that you wish to say?
No, I would just like to say that before anything's passed by the council, if you would, that we would like to review that, and we'd like to work with you, Counselor, on that to make sure that we're all on the same page. So that's what we're looking for.
Veterans, I would recommend that you strengthen this, because who would have thought we'd be here tonight to go over and then run around your right, which was earned in blood, to name the streets in Sayreville after the men and women who fought and died for that right. Who would have thought 20 years ago, when I appointed Ken Kelly and Rich Kosmeski to the Veterans Alliance, would have ever thought we'd be sitting here, because some people didn't like what you had to say, they didn't like the long Polish names, and they were going to take that right from you and forever. So my recommendation is based on this action that almost happened, or may still happen tonight, but my opinion is it's the name supplied to the borough by the Veterans Alliance. May not seem like a lot, but who thought we'd be here tonight to defend this right that you earned? Ken?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, Mr. Mayor, our intention is to work with Mr. Kelly and his colleagues at the Veterans Alliance to come up with a specific recommendation for an ordinance.
This goes long past Riverton. What this strikes is there was a long policy that the Veterans Alliance would supply the names. That was being thrown to the curb, and a new policy was coming into place. So my recommendation has nothing to do with Riverton, and it has everything to do with the rights of the veteran to name the streets of Sayreville. Riverton is not involved in this recommendation. There's no slight intended. It's for the veterans of Sayreville. It's for the veterans of the United States that I recommend this.
Mayor, get this to be done. On behalf of the Alliance, Rich Kosmeski and the American Legion and the VFW, thank you, Counselor, for listening to us tonight. I hope this didn't fall on deaf ears. So we'll be working with both counselors here to have the ordinance worded that's in the best interest of both their organization and the veterans. And again, we appreciate it, and we'll be working diligently with that. Thank you all so much.
Thank you.
We have some direction then by.
Okay, Mary, you had a comment?
Mayor,
Can we
I
get
just
some
wanted to
direction?
say, I just wanted to say that.
Is
I
your
was
mic
the
on?
council- Yes, I just got to bring it closer. When I was on the council with Councilman Skarzinski, he was the driving force of all of the people up here on the council at the time, because he was very upset like that developers at some point were allowed to just stop using the KIAs because the names were hard to pronounce, or because the street signs had to be ordered special to put them on there. And like Rich said, Ray had said to me years ago that if that name was good enough to be on a headstone, it was good enough to be on a street sign. And I really applaud Ray because he really was aware of this, and it was one of the first things that he chose to do when he was on the council, was to get that accomplished. And I'd like to thank former Councilman Skarzinski.
Thank you, Councilman. Thank you, veterans. God bless you.
Mayor, thank you. I just have a question. I have a question because I want a little bit of guidance here. I'm hearing two different things. I hear what the mayor's saying, but I value what you have to say as well. And I'm going to ask Ken Kelly here for a little bit of direction. I'm hearing two things. I'm hearing that the representatives from Riverton want the paragraph 7 stricken from the ordinance, completely taken out, correct? And that,
The counselor.
yeah, I got to understand this
They
better.
want the amended portion stricken out and going back to the existing ordinance that says street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough.
Okay. How do you feel about that? Because I understand what the mayor's saying, and I'm bold here. It seems like what the mayor's saying is there's a policy that we have within the borough stating that the Veteran Alliance provides the names to the borough in order to name the streets. Let's make it an ordinance. Why can't we do that? Why can't we make it an
That's what
ordinance?
this would do, Vicki.
But separate from, because this is an agreement with Riverton. Can't we create a separate ordinance that stands alone in and of itself, taking the policy and turning the policy into ordinance rather than having it hinged or buried within a redevelopment plan ordinance? Shouldn't this stand alone? Shouldn't this policy be made an ordinance on its own?
I'm representing the Alliance, I would have no problem with that.
Can we
But
do?
we can work on that, and we're gonna work with Riverton, and we're gonna get a paragraph, replace number 7.
And pass
This
it at
is
the
the best
separate time?
interest of the borough and of the veterans, okay?
Thank you.
We'll be working on it diligently, okay?
So would it make you, okay, because I just want to know, because we're going to be asked to vote on this ordinance, and I want to do right by all of you, and I want to do what you're saying, which is something right by Riverton as well.
Right.
So,
We discussed with Riverton about eliminating part of that paragraph, is that correct? I don't have the exact words with me, but.
so you're okay with what their suggestion is?
As of the meeting of last week, we are okay with the proposed things to go into the ordinance. However, we have to fine tune this a little bit.
I understand
That's why
that.
we talk.
I'm grateful for the fact that you two came together, because it's not right for me to speak on something. You said it correctly when you said, I have a long list of family members that have served, but I have not had boots on the ground. I have not physically walked in your shoes,
Well,
and I don't want to take that away from you.
Councilwoman, I appreciate your interest in this and your concern. I think we're going to work with this from a legal perspective and maybe get the new ordinance that specifically states it, and work with Riverton to make sure we're all on the same page, so we don't have to come back here with somebody's unhappy or whatever. So I think given a little time, we could probably get this done within the next several weeks, I would say. So perhaps if you didn't want to take action until the next meeting on the new portion of it, that's up to you. But we are satisfied. We had a great meeting last week.
Good.
And we feel we're on the right track. However, it has to be finalized, okay? And we will be working to that end.
Are you okay with us moving forward tonight to approve the change as was read by Mr. DuPont? Or are you asking that we not do that?
I would ask that it be held because we still have a lot of talking to do about this. And it may come out to be the same thing, but I'm not sure exactly what he's saying, and I don't want to agree to something that we might have to change again, so.
But you're okay if we vote on it with removing the set, just altogether,
Yes,
just
yes,
take it all
yes.
out?
7 is the issue, and if we do that, fine. And then we'll, like I said, we'll be working hard on that with all the powers that be, and we'll come to a conclusion and for the benefit of everyone.
That's
Okay?
it. I want you
Again,
guys together.
thank you all so much, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, sir.
And if
As you know, from serving up here, it's never done. Hold on.
I just want to be clear that you're removing also the language that says street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough?
No, what we were proposing is to remove all
I
references.
know what you're proposing, but that's not what Mr. Kelly is saying. Mr. Kelly is saying to remove the
7
whole
entirely.
paragraph. So I think Ms. Smith needs to, so little input here, that it was my understanding, based on just an earlier discussion a few minutes ago, that the only thing that would be remaining.
This is,
7.
before we,
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying, everyone, but how big an issue is this going to be if we postpone this to the next meeting, rather than trying to strike an agreement here under these conditions? That's what Ken is saying.
That's what I'm leading to, yes.
So when, at the Sarah Board meeting on July 11th, Mr. Kelly came and asked if we could, if the agency, I'm sorry, could either postpone the second reading or to remove this section regarding a change to the way streets would be named at Riverton. And we're here tonight to concur with the idea that we would just remove any changes to the way streets would be named at Riverton. Status quo would control the Riverton, the waterfront redevelopment plan that's currently structured regarding street names would be status quo, no change, until we can work out a specific plan for street naming at Riverton, and we would start the process over with that specific provision with the redevelopment agency, the planning board, the council. That would take several months,
So,
but just remove it from the
Kevin,
process
the
entirely.
question I have, you and Bridget are both attorneys. If this is removed in its entirety, number 7 is removed in its entirety, does it adversely affect what you're doing?
I'm not an attorney, but I don't think so.
If you remove section 7 this evening and vote on the balance of the ordinance.
Right.
Then we can proceed as we've been proceeding, and then can move forward with having further discussions with the Veterans Alliance and coming back to the council.
Right.
That would be fine.
Now, does this in any way put the veterans at a disadvantage or back to square one?
No, in fact, the ordinance would say exactly what it has said for the last 20 years.
So the language that I keep repeating is going to remain,
Correct.
right?
Street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained
That's going to remain.
Correct.
by the borough. So just that one line.
Right, all the other provisions
Are
are
gone.
out.
I would put,
Well, there's also, Mayor, there's also a resolution, separate and apart from this, that was already adopted by the council and remains in effect, that indicates how veteran
no,
names...
it's a policy.
No, it's a resolution, Mayor.
It's a reso?
There's
Okay.
already a resolution
Okay.
that's been adopted that requires the Veterans Alliance to provide
Okay.
the list.
Okay.
So it's-
So we're going to take it from a reso to an ordinance.
here it would say,
Right. No, it has nothing to do with the work that you're doing. The governing body is going to take the reso, strengthen it into an ordinance.
I think the reso she's talking about just pertains to Riverton, Mayor.
no, the resolution pertains to the entire town.
Okay, good.
Entire borough.
Right.
Mayor, we're looking to avoid any ambiguity in the
Correct.
proceedings that coming up.
Right.
We want it to be infirmed that they're happy and we're happy. And then we can let you know that that's the deal.
All right.
I think it's, I'm sorry, Mayor.
Go ahead.
I think it's pretty clear that the existing ordinance, without any amendments, specifically states streets' names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough. Maintained by the borough. So it's the borough's responsibility, duty, to maintain this and have that list maintained with whatever names that you suggest. So that is going to be, it can still in this ordinance, whatever the number is.
Why-
7.
458, 458, right. 45819.
This is the problem, doing this here at a meeting. Is so important.
This is the public part. This is when it's supposed to be done.
No.
This process, this is actually the 7th public meeting. on this ordinance. It started in March, and we've been to Sarah, we were here, we were to the planning board twice, we were back.
Stanley,
here.
take a look at that, would you?
So if you ask, if you don't adopt it tonight, you know, it's a process that's been going on for months, and the next steps of redevelopment hinge on having this ordinance adopted.
Mr. Mayor, I don't want to belabor this. I think that
Hey, Ken?
we're requesting no action be taken on that whole paragraph, and we'll work on it, and we can just add it in at a later
You
meeting.
want the whole paragraph removed then?
I think so. Well, we're not
Okay.
happy with it right now.
Okay.
and new. Old version, as Mike was trying to say, that would
Yeah, we could,
be inserted in.
yeah, strike it, okay? And then we can hash it out, and so we're all on the same page. But
Okay.
right now,
Right, right. You don't know
somewhat
where you are.
ambiguous, so.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
So if we could wait till the next meeting, we'll be ready, and perhaps the council could
Then we're gonna have to
vote on that,
postpone-
and you know,
postpone the
whatever you
public
guys
hearing.
want to do, but.
You know, you're getting to a point where it's more than just minor changes here. These are substantial changes that you're gonna have to introduce and then re-adopt.
Well,
So either you go back, Mayor.
Original.
Why don't we
either you go
not
back
take
to the
any action
original-
on it?
Again, this, you know, if you want to go,
I just want to be clear, when you say strike the paragraph, you want it to.
Can I interject for 1 second? First of all, thank you. Thank all of you. Is it necessary, we've broken a little bit from our usual schedule. Can we give you guys an opportunity to go in the back, go and talk, take a little bit of time, figure out, and come back and give us a recommendation? You're all here. Why do we have to hash this out right now the way this is? Can we turn around then and add this back to the agenda a little bit later in the meeting, depending on what you guys come up with, so that we're not talking from microphone to microphone? Let you guys talk and think
Let
it
them have
out.
the conversation amongst themselves. Wait a minute, let's hear what the veterans have to say.
You know, we came to a pretty good agreement, I think, that we hashed out. We just want to be very careful on the legal, how it's legally written. I mean, I don't think I'm speaking for everybody who was at the meeting, and maybe the rest of the veterans are here. What we basically agreed to, that we think we could live with, was I think there were 2 or 3 streets that are specifically north-south streets, right? There were 3, Riverton Boulevard or wherever it was.
Yeah, there were probably 5 north-south streets, Stanley.
Well, yeah, I mean, the bottom line was we can hash this out where there were a couple of streets, like the waterfront one made sense, the name Waterfront, I believe it was. And there was one that was called Riverton that we said we could live with. And then the other streets, the number 1, 2, 3, 4, we would do like a New York City Avenue of the Americas type thing. And everything else is the old way. So I think what we should do is we should table, what we really want to do is table this section.
The entire ordinance.
No, that one piece on the street naming.
Okay, that's when it becomes, you know, you have minor and major, Stanley.
Well,
That's when it transcends from the minor tweak to the major tweak, which is okay by me. Riverton, so it would have to be reintroduced, and we'd have to go through the whole cycle, which I don't particularly
we
have
just
an
don't,
objection
we
to.
want it specifically worded so there's no, I mean, who knows who's going to be sitting on Sarah in a year and blah, blah,
Right.
blah. We want it very specific. If we're going to give a waiver to veterans,
Right.
we want that waiver to be very specific to one developer in this particular project and nothing else. That's the only worry we have, that it has to be very specific.
I'm with you.
And
I'm
we're
with
agreeing
you.
with you. We're agreeing with you. That's.
My question was only how to move forward with that 7, with that number
Correct.
7 paragraph.
No.
I want you guys to talk for as long
Vicky,
as you need to.
Vicky, they're asking that the whole ordinance be tabled.
No, Mayor,
That's,
that,
are you,
That's section 7.
with all due respect,
if you do
Mayor,
section 7,
But you
Does
can't
it-
just, you cannot delete section
Do you
7
wanna-
because it's a major change
right,
in the
that's what I'm
ordinance.
saying.
Right, so here's
if I might,
poor Mr. Schreck is trying desperately to come up here too. So I want to make sure he has his
No,
opportunity to
Vicky,
speak.
just hold off.
if I might, if there is an agreement that they will, if there's an agreement that the existing old language remains.
Which is, just say what it is, Mike.
Right, that's what I'm saying again. Street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough. That's a minor change to check, to just delete the next sentence. The question is this old language acceptable? If it's not, if there's any changes to that, then I do think you have to reintroduce and adopt.
See what.
Mayor, on number 7, where it says street names should be chosen from a list of veterans maintained by the borough, what we'd like to see added is, after maintained by the borough, submitted by the Veterans Alliance.
Correct.
Submitted and approved by the Veterans Alliance, and then everything after that, we can take out.
And can we do that, or is that a major change?
I think it's a major change.
Okay.
It's certainly not something that's minor. It's my understanding that
Fellas, this is, again, my opinion. My opinion is, you didn't cause this. You did not cause this snafu. You should not be held to any timetable because you're here from the work, from the actions of other people. You need to get this right, and you need to get it as ironclad as you can get it. And I apologize to Riverton. You're important to Saraville. We want you to succeed. But again, I'm not going to penalize the veterans for something they had nothing to do with.
And Mayor, we're not asking you to. We're asking you to just revert back to exactly what the ordinance says.
They're not happy with it. They're not comfortable making a negotiation here in the public.
I have it here if you want to. I will show you what the ordinance says today.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I will show you what it says today.
I don't want to say yes today, and it's not what we want.
Right.
Something different.
This is what I wanted them to have a chance to do.
What exactly are we reverting to?
Two street names got snuck in because it was not, they didn't go to Veterans Alliance. It went to you people, not you people, but whoever wants to follow.
I'm not sure.
And it came up here, I recommend the street be named after my family.
And we want to put them after that, names that are approved.
Right.
Then we'll start. Then we'll table it tonight, and that's the wording we want in there. Submitted and approved by the Veterans Alliance.
That's
That's the way it's going to be.
okay, then it's not proof passing.
Reintroduce it tonight. What is your recommendation, Rich and Ken?
We want to see, after it says street names should be chosen from a list of veterans maintained by the borough, which is submitted and approved by the Veterans Alliance.
It doesn't.
Everything else after that, removed.
All right, and Counselor, what does that mean?
I just have-
Do we need a reintroduction?
I would like to ask a question. Isn't the list that we have right now that's maintained by the borough supplied by the Veterans Alliance?
Yes, but it doesn't say that in writing anywhere in the ordinance.
I realize that, but any list that's maintained by the borough is already supplied by the Veterans Alliance. So if we say maintained by the borough, we are saying supplied by the Veterans Alliance, because
this
that's
whole
any
ordinance-
list that we have.
You're saying that tonight, Mary, but 10 years from now, somebody else won't be saying that.
Wait a minute, the
But
last
But what
meeting,
Mrs. Kilpatrick said was we should change the policy to an ordinance, and that would stop this from ever happening again.
fellas, you got to remember, at the last meeting, they took the first vote to take that right away from you. So you better get it right.
No,
I
Mayor,
want
we
you to get
just-
it right.
The vote was just to introduce the ordinance, and that's why we have a public hearing, so we can hash this out.
Well, I
All that
think-
vote was to bring it to the floor for a public hearing. That's what that vote is, Mayor.
Well, if it wasn't for a veteran spotting it, it might have gone through without comment tonight also.
I don't think that the
I know.
veteran sitting up here would allow that to happen, no.
Go ahead, Ed.
I'm not too well versed on all this political,
Legal.
political decisions by the attorney, by the borough attorney, but I think Mrs. Kilpatrick has a very good idea. Why can't we just delete section 7 of the ordinance, that ordinance, and create an ordinance directly pointed at street names in Sayreville submitted by the Sayreville Veterans Alliance? Why can't we do that? Just recreate another ordinance?
You guys are going to tell us what you want.
Okay.
All right, so you got to talk to Ken and Rich.
I think that would eliminate a lot of confusion.
Talk to Ken and Rich.
Can,
As far-
I'll go so far as to say I'll ask for a special meeting in a week to make sure that ordinance is introduced. Oh, it wouldn't be a week. How long would it be?
It may take a little time to create an ordinance
You
because
guys
there has to be a lot of input from the veterans that are present here today.
Whenever you're ready, if there's we don't even have to wait for a council meeting. As soon as it gets done, we'll hand it to Terry and say, what's the soonest we can get it done?
I'm sure we're,
If you
I'm
do
sure
that
we're
separate.
going, I'm sure we're going to meet with Riverton again.
You know what?
Correct.
Do the veterans want to go into 308 or 310 and discuss this? We'll hold this off till you guys come back. And this way, you don't have to, you're not going to get distracted. You can speak amongst yourselves, go take whichever room you want, and come up with what you want us to do. Would you guys be all right with that?
With your permission, we'll go to 310.
Yeah.
We'll have a short meeting, so that we're all on the same page, because right now we're...
We won't take any action on this till you return. All right?
You gotta go back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
308, Ken, somebody's in 310. Okay. No. It's all the veterans.
He's got to.
It's going to be the attorney.
Explain what he can do and what he can't do.
Yeah, but where's Mike gonna, Mike, go ahead, but where are you gonna be with the other stuff?
Well, if you have any problems with these ordinances, just come back.
You know, this is like a goofy goddamn thing. Go ahead. Okay. No, if you want to go, Mike, if you think that's the place to be.
Do we want to, Mayor, can we move to a different point in the
Yes,
agenda?
that's what I'm gonna do.
That would be great.
The next,
Can we do that at the
the next, well, I want to wait to hear what they want to do. We can do the other two ordinances.
No, I realize that, but Mike has to be there to tell them what they can do and what they can't do.
I understand that, Mary. It's like he has to clone himself. All right, so before I move forward into old business, I did want to ask if there's anyone here from NCBDI group. It's I believe it's a public, a PR group. We have asked to meet with them a number of times. Is anyone here from NCBDI? No? Okay. All right, so Terry will go into old business, and we're going to hold off on 459-19 till the veterans return.
Yes, Mayor, we are still in old business, and old business, as we were trying to conduct the public hearings, we'll move forward with the next ordinance, ordinance number 459-19.
Okay, this time I'm going to open the
I have
public.
to read it into
Go
record,
ahead.
an ordinance amending and supplementing Chapter 7 of the revised general ordinances of the Borough of Sayreville, amending Section 7-4.1, trucks excluded from certain streets.
At this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments on ordinance 459-19. This has to do with trucks on
Kimball Drive East and
Kimball
West.
Drive East and West. Counselor?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Robert Griffin, Griffin Alexander PC, on behalf of the Main Street Townhome Association. First of all, I would like to thank the mayor and council for bringing this ordinance to a vote tonight. And hopefully adopting it. I've now had a chance to look at the language of the ordinance, proposed ordinance, and I have a couple of little suggestions. The first one is that there probably needs to be an exception of some sort for trucks internal to the community, such as guys moving in with a big truck and guys moving out with a big truck. And we have
Contractors.
sidewalk work and roofing work and siding work, and they bring big trucks and they bring dumpsters in, and all of those operations have to still occur. The primary impetus for this, as I understand it, was that we were talking at our last meeting about the Main Street bypass and how awful it would be, in addition to the redevelopment plan on the Mako property, having trucks come in and out, to have trucks come in and out through Kimball Drive East and Kimball Drive West. So I suppose you could say in the alternative that you could close, truck traffic would be closed to through traffic between the bypass and Main Street, but of course then we have the slight problem that there's no bypass yet. And so this raises kind of a second issue. This council knows that the redevelopment plan that you approved last month will affect traffic on Main Street. You knew it before Main Street started asking me to come to have meetings with you commencing in May, and now you know specifics about it because the Main Street community engaged a traffic expert and conducted a study, and I shared that with you last month, and I summarized it for you, if you recall. The passage of the redevelopment plan, as you could see from the study that we presented, makes the bypass a must, and it makes it an imminent must. Ironically, one of the things that has been holding up the bypass is the fact that the Main Street community has been opposing the bypass. And the shame of it is that the Main Street community does not want to oppose the bypass. The Main Street community has really only asked for two things, one of which you're prepared to approve tonight, which would be to prevent trucks from coming through a residential community. The second thing we asked for is the most important one to us, and that is that the bypass not be allowed to open until the bypass is constructed at least through to Crossman Road, or since Crossman Road is a private road, perhaps some other road going farther up where there is not as much traffic. If you will recall, our traffic study indicated that the current level of service at the intersection of Kimball Drive East is an F for failure. We are proposing to add 1.8 million square feet of warehouse space to that location or very close to it. And there is no current plan for ameliorating traffic coming into that intersection. If we were to allow the Main Street bypass to operate from River Road and dump all of its traffic out at that self-same intersection of Main Street and Kimball Drive East, you're going to have a huge, huge mess. And that's what we're trying to avoid. If those things occurred, then we would like to have an offline discussion about Main Street withdrawing its objections and perhaps even supporting the bypass so that it can get done. Because once you start allowing the redevelopment of the 1.8 million square feet of warehousing space, something's got to be done. We had a meeting, the council recommended, and we had a meeting with Mr. Mako. And one of the points that Mr. Mako made that was actually quite a good point was that all the risk of the development is on him. If he builds 1.8 million square feet of warehousing space and no one will rent that space from him because he can't get his trucks in and he can't get his trucks out in a reasonable amount of time, that project will fail. And I don't even need to tell you that that means that the borough will never get its proper ratables. So I would like you to consider that. And we had asked, I wrote 2 different letters to your council and asked for an offline meeting with some representatives of the council so that Main Street can freely discuss its issues and to have free discussion without doing it as you've just done with the veterans, you know, back and forth where people don't feel that they can give their honest opinions online. And I'm going to suggest that again, that we have some kind of an offline meeting and maybe we bring Mr. Mako in. I don't know if it's appropriate. I think the reason that Mr. DuPont was reluctant while we were doing the redevelopment plan was that there was a major settlement of a major litigation happening at the time, and any purported interference with the redevelopment plan by trying to appease the Main Street community would have been viewed as problematic, I'm guessing, okay? So I would like to know, though, did the settlement with Mr. Mako or his entity and the borough go through? Can anybody tell me that?
Yeah, it did.
It finished?
Right.
Okay.
We're waiting for a signed order, but if in fact you want to meet and discuss Main Street bypass, I wasn't aware that you had sent any correspondence to anyone on the dais. If you want to send me a copy, I'll certainly sit down with you and go through some of your concerns.
Okay.
I didn't get a courtesy copy that you sent to any of the ones on the dais.
Sorry, I sent it to you.
You sent it, well, that was months ago, but you
Well, it
implied
was-
recently that
it
you
was
just sent it.
Once.
You sent it
after-
months ago, that's
after-
correct.
Yeah, in
You sent it
June.
correct, and then
when our time was shortened,
right,
I
and
sent
then
the
you,
second letter.
right, and then that resulted in the meeting with Mr. Mako, and so
Which I presumed, to be fair, that would have caused a lot of problems with your settlement. So it's not that I'm
okay.
blaming
Well, again,
anybody.
what I'm offering to you is in fact that you wish to discuss these concerns. Right now, we're just talking about the Kimball Drive and Kimball West ordinance. If there's further discussion on, you know, your concerns regarding the Main Street bypass, I'd love to sit down with you.
Okay. And the second part of this is I understood that Mr. Mako or one of his entities committed to giving the borough a piece of property so that the bypass could occur. Can anyone verify that for me?
I can address that. That's just an agreement to agree. There hasn't been any easement provided. There hasn't been, it's an agreement to agree. I've reached out for counsel from Mr. Mako, and I'm waiting for a return phone call.
What agreement? I still don't know anything about an agreement here. We've never seen anything regarding an agreement, regarding property being given over by Mako. Can someone please enlighten me?
There
What,
was-
can I,
There was an agreement that Mr. Mako made with the borough that says, and I don't have a copy of it in front of me, but it says it's an agreement to agree to provide assistance or some sort of easement for the purpose of Main Street.
who did he make that, when you say borough, who in the borough agreed to this? Did you agree to it, Mrs. Novak? I don't know anything about this agreement. Do you know anything about this agreement? Do you know anything? I do not know anything about this agreement, and I have some serious reservations. Can someone please produce or show me what this agreement is? Because I've been getting some concerning information. Can you enlighten me as to what this agreement is?
Apparently, there was an agreement executed between Mr. Mako and the borough, which the mayor.
Who is the borough? I went through this with,
The mayor signed an agreement to agree.
okay, okay, this is how we got into the COA problem, which we ended up having to go into litigation over, and the judge turned around and stated that the agreement that was signed by the mayor, who had no authority to do so, turned around and what we overturned our COA agreement on. Are you telling me right now, Mr. DuPont, that the mayor entered into an agreement as the borough? We are the borough. I didn't vote on anything. I haven't seen anything. And now I'm highly concerned because it's my understanding that there is property apparently tied to this easement, whatever this giveaway was, that is the subject of potential environmental contamination from the dredge that was pulled from the Raritan River and placed on that property. If the mayor signed some type of an agreement acting as the borough, which he has no authority to do, he just tied all of you residents and this borough to cleaning up a potential environmental disaster. And I have a major problem with that, and I do not want to go into litigation again to the tune of tens, $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, like we had to do with the COA to right the wrong that the mayor did. It sounds like he did the exact same thing again. Did you enter into an agreement posing as the borough mayor with Mako, and had you done your homework, like I had asked our attorney to do at the last meeting, which was, can you please contact the developer and discuss the easements and the possibility of giving that to the borough? See, that's open and transparent and getting the information and the facts beforehand. I am concerned, and I want this agreement presented to us so that the residents here know whether or not the mayor just entered into an agreement that could cost you hundreds, thousands, millions of dollars in potential cleanup that we shouldn't have anything to do with. We've got a problem here, people, and I don't want this meeting to continue another second longer until someone produces this supposed agreement.
Okay.
Can I make a motion that this agreement be presented to the council so we can move forward? Because I have a serious problem. Our residents could right now be in some type of legal responsibility, and I don't want to move forward with this without an attorney telling me what went on.
Are you finished, Counselor?
I had one more question.
All right,
Is it on the, a motion was made and seconded.
yeah, but we have somebody at the.
Yeah, we were supposed to be talking about only one ordinance. We've seemed to go into 15 different things. So, I mean, we're already way off base here, but there's a motion and a second.
What are we doing? We're telling the guy to sit down at the normal?
No, he can stand. We need to vote on the motion. I want the agreement presented. So I think, Terry, how does this proceed at this point?
We have a motion made and motion second that we cease or stop this meeting right now until this agreement is presented. That's what I heard. So a motion made and second. Counselor, proceed with the roll call, or do we?
Yeah, I mean, there's
And then we have this.
There's some insinuation by the attorney who is speaking on this ordinance that there is some agreement. And so
I'm asking the question.
No,
I have
you
no
asked
idea.
you were asked a question based on some sort of knowledge. So the question is, based on that knowledge, Councilman Kilpatrick, or Councilwoman Kilpatrick and Councilwoman Novak have asked the agreement be produced.
I hear you.
So that motion should be heard and voted on.
And that means the meeting stops.
The meeting stops until it's produced. So you gotta have a roll call.
I'm not in charge of procedure. I'll let
No,
you
I'm
do
not,
what
but
you're doing.
you alerted to an agreement that apparently you have some sort of knowledge about. So if you have knowledge about it, then it should be produced.
And I believe Mr. Rittenhouse alluded to that same thing at the last meeting.
And so if it should be produced, then produce it.
Well, if you're asking me to produce
Now, I'm
it,
not asking you to produce it, but the Councilwoman Novak and Councilwoman Kilpatrick are saying, all right, produce it.
and
So
I understood
before, so there's a second, there's a first and a second. The vote should be taken so that they can answer your questions,
Take a roll call.
so that they can answer your questions.
This
Councilpersons
entire
Gil-
meeting is over. If this
Until someone
motion
produces
passes.
an alleged agreement. Mayor, very simple. Did you sign an agreement, Mayor? Is there an
That's not
agreement?
what you're asking for. You're asking for a signed copy. So
I-
take
I'm
a roll
asking for
call.
the agreement.
Motion made and seconded.
Councilpersons Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Delina? Yes. Enriquez? Yes. McGill?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Hey, Terry, there is an agreement which I instructed be distributed to the governing body and to the professionals. I assumed it was. It was while you were on vacation.
Blame Terry the last time, too.
So there is
She
an
put
agreement.
something on
No,
her
Terry
desk.
was on vacation.
Let's have the agreement. The mayor just acknowledged that there is an agreement. Let's get that agreement.
That way we can answer questions.
Well, that way we can turn around and have a discussion
You were there when I
about the potential environmental issues that he just made us all
Yeah, go ahead.
subject
Make
to.
copies for everybody.
And I don't know that that instruction was given to my staff.
It was given. It was given.
I would just, unfortunately, we just took an adjournment until until a document was produced. I apologize to our veterans for the extra delay. So,
Mayor, Vicky, maybe I'll go and talk to council.
Hey, Mike, you're doing a pretty good job of hacking me up tonight, so
No, Mayor.
you go
don't
do what you want
blame-
to do.
First, it's Terry's office that doesn't distribute it. Now it's Mike's fault that you did something?
I gave specific
You got a history of this,
instructions.
Mayor.
Mary,
You got a history of it.
I have about 5 months. 5 months.
Mayor, can we make a motion for recess till this is resolved?
You can make a motion for vanilla ice cream if you like.
I just want to recess. That's till we work everything out, get the
Is there a second?
veterans out of here.
We'll take a 10-minute recess.
Thank you, Mayor.
Ken?
politics out of it. But anyway, I personally Ken, you gonna put us on? Hey, Keith. Keith. Hey, Keith.
That's what we're going back to the
I'm not sure on this.
gonna leave the first sentence.
Make a motion, we reconvene now that we have this document in front of us. Oh, sorry, Terry.
Call the meeting back to order. Ken, Rich, Keith, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. Rich, we're under a legal estoppel at the moment, so I'll call you when we're not estoppel anymore. Okay. That being said, the Borough Clerk,
No, I need a motion to go back into open session.
motion to go back into open.
Second.
Second, oh, sorry. You were fast, sorry.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Okay, so this is the agreement to execute, and it was on the 10th day of July. I had received a request to meet with Mr. Mako. I met with him on July 8th in my office down the hall at 4:15. We met for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and it was about the ordinance affecting his property. And as the conversation was coming to a close, I said, Mr. Mako, you have something that the borough would like. He said, what's that? I said, you have the property that's required for the completion of the Main Street extension. He said, I'll give it to you. Okay, hold on. Were you there? Okay. I called the borough engineer. I said, listen, are you going to be there for a while? I briefly told him the reason for the meeting was I was with Mr. Mako, and he had tentatively agreed with a handshake that he would accommodate the borough, because without that property, the Main Street extension couldn't happen. So we went over to the offices of CME. We met with the borough engineer, and I at that point, I said, we put the maps up on the board, or the engineer did, and we discussed which parcels. And what this statement is a right-of-way. So we don't have to go through a long legal process to use that property when we want to extend the Main Street extension. Now, I told Mr. Mako that I would need an agreement prepared and signed by him by the 10th of July, which was 2 days, because that was when I either was going to return the ordinance with a veto or I was going to sign it. And anyway, he got it to me with like 30, 45 minutes to spare. And I signed it. There was no transaction of money. It merely has to do with the right-of-way. So we have a right-of-way to use this property, which is contaminated, and it was stated it was contaminated. We didn't purchase it. We didn't take ownership of it. We don't have legal title to it. We have a right-of-way to enter into the negotiations. All that means is, had I not done that, and it just appeared to me as an opportunity for the borough to avoid lengthy litigation when we're ready to do that portion of the bypass. If the council doesn't want it, they can rip it up and throw it out. It costs us nothing. It could help us a great deal. It wasn't something I was looking for any credit on, because I believe you can get more done when you don't look for the credit than you can ever get done when all you're looking for is the credit. So this was duly signed, and here it is. And Terry, if you have some extra, put them out there for people.
Can we?
Well, I got one copy.
At this point, I think it would be a good idea, as soon as possible, to let everybody read this agreement.
I gave instructions that it be sent to
Okay.
the governing body.
I'm talking about to the residents, because let's talk about what the mayor just told us he did. First of all, the mayor, I believe, Mr. DuPont, does he have the right to enter into a binding agreement for the borough as the mayor without bringing this to a vote by the governing body in the weak mayor form of government that we have?
Again, any and all agreements have to be approved and authorized by the council. And this agreement is just an agreement to execute an easement for right-of-way for the Main Street bypass. And it gives specific blocks, Block 245, Lot 1, 246, Lot 1, and 246, Lot 1.06. And it just gives, or it's an agreement, it's entitled to an agreement to execute an easement. So, having read this agreement, we're probably going to have to amplify and ensure that if in fact the council wants to, probably, again, enter into an easement agreement. This is just an agreement to execute an easement.
So let me just go through this a little bit. Here's my concern to all the residents here and watching, okay? You have an agreement here that will execute an easement that the mayor has just admitted to us that he was made aware that it is a contaminated site as a result of dredge material being pulled from the river and being dumped on this site. It's my understanding that the developer, the owner of this property, is in some type of discussion with the county because he doesn't want to have to clean it up because he didn't leave that material there. This agreement should include and acknowledge the fact that this is a known environmental dump and that the borough of Saraville and the residents of Saraville and the taxpayers of Saraville should not, in taking ownership of this easement, this right-of-way for the bypass, we should not be held accountable for having to clean it up, fix it up, make it environmentally clean, because we all know the cost of that. The developers of Riverton can tell you the cost of what it's like to turn around and remove environmentals. We would have had Riverton done years and years and years and years ago if environmental cleanups were that easy. Here's my problem. This agreement, as the mayor states, was done on 7/10/19. You never saw it. We never saw it until we adjourned today. What would have happened? I shudder to think where we would be when we take ownership of this and we move forward with that bypass and we get potentially slapped with the tens of millions of thousands of dollars it would cost to turn around and clean this up and run this road and do what we know is right, which is build the bypass in Saraville. We have been down the road before where the mayor goes in a back room, whether it be his office or not, closes the door and meets with the developer. This is what we get. An agreement that none of us would know about still to this day if we didn't just adjourn a meeting and make the clerk go and get this. This is not good government. This is not transparency. Transparency is asking the attorney to contact the developer, talk with them about what's going on with that property, and bring that information back to us. That is not what happened here. We had to wait for an attorney from the Main Street Townhomes to come up and tell us that there was an agreement. I love the fact that the attorney for Main Street Townhomes, who I don't believe you live here, do you, sir? So he doesn't even live in Saraville. And yet, surprisingly, he knew about this agreement. And none of us did. That's not good government. That's not transparency. That's not integrity, people. Now, I'm going to ask our attorney to finally review this document rather than the 5 minutes that we've had to do so now. Turn around and do his job as the attorney, which he should have been asked to do prior to ink being put on paper, and make sure that the residents of Saraville are protected and make sure that we move forward in a way that is going to get us a bypass, that is going to turn around and make sure that we're not responsible for millions of dollars of environmental cleanup, because that's the way government should be, transparent and before all of you. This is disturbing. We went through this with COA. You want to look at the legal bills for it that Mr. Rittenhouse calls for all the time? So those legal bills were incurred because of the exact same type of agreement. We won that litigation because the mayor signed the document without our knowledge, without the authorization of the council. And what did we get besides the legal bills? Luckily, because we hired one of the most competent COA attorneys in the state, a 30% reduction in overall development, veteran preference housing, and tonight you're going to see open space. We purchased land right next to Kennedy Park. But it cost us something because the mayor entered into a negotiations and a deal without the council. And that has to stop, ladies and gentlemen. And it's going to stop right now. Mr. DuPont, I'm going to ask that you review this. You are our attorney, that you turn around and you make sure that what you present to us regarding the rights to easement is something that protects our residents, protects our borough, and gets us the bypass that the Main Street Townhome residents want and that all of us want. I make a motion, if needed, that we authorize Mr. DuPont to go back, review this, meet with the developer, and bring us back an agreement that we can use, be proud of, and be protected by.
I second that. But I have a question. Excuse me. I have.
This is not about, for those that didn't hear, the comment was, the mayor's not even running. This isn't about politics, and for a statement to come out, I am not. I am giving a speech about what the residents should hear. That's what should happen.
Mayor.
If I understood correctly, this was not.
This did not happen, Mayor. He's speaking from the audience.
Fred, I'll have to call you up at the appropriate time. So there's a motion made, a motion seconded, roll call.
I don't know that we needed a motion for that.
I asked
I
if
have no
needed.
idea.
I asked if needed.
I would like to ask a question. I'm just reading this real quickly. If this is just, why did we indemnify and hold harmless and to defend the grantor from any liabilities, claims, or damage matters arising from the guarantees, this is us, exercise of the rights and privileges granted herein?
Yeah.
It just seems to me that are we going to be, by this, held liable for anything already? We already granted them indemnification
Well,
for anything.
the agreement certainly is simply just an agreement to execute an easement for the right-of-way for the Main Street bypass.
So when the easement is granted, we won't be held with this indemnification clause?
The language will have to be reflected that it'll be limited to whatever we are using the Main Street bypass roadway easement for.
But
So
right now, that's not been done. This indemnifies them, holds them safe,
That's kind of really
harmless.
scary.
That's why I would love for everybody to see. Copies should be made available to every single resident in this room so you can see what was signed.
I just want to make sure that we haven't already put the borough's tails on the line
All
with
right, put
this.
it up on the website.
no, we are,
Asking for a legal opinion.
this is just an agreement to execute an easement agreement. So
Okay.
as I said before, I did reach out to Mr. Lair. I'm waiting for a phone call. I will further discuss this with him, this agreement to execute an easement agreement.
Okay, are we through this part? Okay, with that, Counselor, do you want to come back and conclude your time at the podium, please?
I made a motion. Was it seconded? Did it need to be made as a motion?
I mean, do we need a motion at all?
I think I got the offer.
Yeah.
Okay,
Come on
that
up,
was my
Counselor.
question.
Just gonna make a notation that there's no motion necessary or needed.
Thank you, Terry.
Thank you.
Summarize. I think that we should have an offline
Who's
discussion.
speaking, please?
with-
Counselor, if you can identify yourself again for the record.
I'm sorry, Robert Griffin Alexander, PC, on behalf of the Main Street Homeowners Association. I think, to summarize, I would like to take you up on your offer, Mr. DuPont, to meet with you offline, and we're going to need the township engineer to participate. We're going to have to look at the maps and so forth. But what we ought to be doing is stop fighting with each other if we essentially agree.
We need to stop doing things like this. We need to stop making decisions behind closed doors without including the governing body.
Right, but that's not what, That's not what I'm here for.
I'll reach
I'm
out.
here-
We're
I'll
we're
reach
here
out
on
to
one particular ordinance, so we're really off the beaten path here with all the things we're talking about.
Griffin,
Anyway, that's my little
If
summation.
you give me
I'm
some
done. Thank
dates
you.
tomorrow, Becky will schedule an appointment.
That's, all right, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Arthur, you had your hand up? Right, this is on the Kimball Drive, no truck ordinance.
Yes. Arthur Rittenhouse, 33 Delacat Lane, Main Street Townhomes. I agree with the ordinance having Kimball Drive east and west going through, limiting it to trucks, but as Mr. Griffin said, we have to have something there that will not prevent the other ones. And also, seeing my name was brought up in this discussion about this, at the last meeting, both Mr. Robinson and I asked about Mr. Frankel and asked if he could comment on this agreement that we were just discussing. And Mary, who was running the meeting, did not ask Mr. Frankel, and neither did any of the other council people. Mr. Frankel knew about the agreement. He's the one who told Mr. Robinson about the agreement.
Can we discuss
That's
this
not-
at the open
Yeah,
public part?
I would like to.
No, this was part of what was just done there. All right, never mind. You want to cut me off?
Because somebody else did, that's all.
No, this was,
That has nothing to do with the ordinance that we're having a public hearing on right now.
well then, Councilwoman Kilpatrick should not have been commenting on all the stuff she did during this.
I agree.
Okay, are there any other questions or comments on this ordinance? There being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Roll call?
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
McGill? Novak?
Yes.
Ken Kelly?
I'm sorry.
Ken Kelly, if you and Rich would like to come up. Keith, might as well come up.
Mr. Mayor, we've come to an agreement.
If you, I need everybody to identify themselves.
I'm sorry. Ken Kelly, co-chairman, Sayreville Veterans Alliance.
Yes, our agreement, when we met with
Rich,
the...
Rich, you gotta-
Rich Kosmowski, Wilson Avenue.
Keith, you want to identify yourself in the event you give testimony?
Yes, Keith Kendall, VFW, post 4699.
Thank you.
Meeting with the representatives from Riverton and our other veterans. Our number 7, which states street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough. Everything after that, we want stricken. What I just said, we will work on in the upcoming weeks to get that changed to our approval.
Okay.
But that'll get us out of here for this evening, with that being stricken.
Okay, but I got to open up to the public portion, so if you guys would wait. Counselor, did you want to speak at all? Kevin, did you want to speak at all?
I'd just like to thank the Veterans Alliance, the representatives, and the council, mayor and council, for your patience with the process this evening. Thanks.
Okay. So Terry, if you'd read that ordinance, and then I'll open the public portion on
Read the ordinance?
No, just don't need to
What
read it.
what are we on?
it, the Veterans Ordinance.
We're at 45819.
Yes.
Read the whole thing?
No, it's,
Hold on.
wait a minute, no.
It's my page.
Yeah.
Okay, now we're going to open the public hearing on ordinance 458-19, or no? This is for the rest of the public, right? This is an ordinance amending the waterfront redevelopment plan of the Borough of Sayreville County, Middlesex, State of New Jersey.
Are there any questions or comments from the public on this ordinance? Ruth Ann, did you want to make a comment? Come on up, hon.
Ruth Ann Mahoney, 2 Gerard Place, Berlin. I just wanted to say I'm in favor of naming any road for any veteran at any time. Because the developers, my feeling, as I always say, is they wouldn't be developing this country if it weren't for our veterans. And it's quite disrespectful to feel because of a spelling or whatever else that it shouldn't be done. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Arthur?
Arthur Rittenhouse, 33 Delacat Lane. The question is now, did you amend that to what was just agreed upon by the veterans? I didn't hear anybody state that.
No, it's
When
been-
it was read, I didn't hear it.
This is just the public portion of it, but it has been and will be changed to strike out all the language other than the language. If Terry can have me a copy.
When we do
So
the
the
final-
so the
when we do
language,
final reading
so the
before
language, the only thing that's remaining, Mr. Rittenhouse,
Yes.
is street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough. All other language will be restricted from the ordinance.
Thank you. And one other thing, I'm going to switch hats as president of the Sayreville Historical Society. I want to commend the veterans, and I want to commend Commander Ed Streck, because 3 years ago, we do tours. All of our fourth graders come to the museum, and they also come to Borough Hall. They do a history. And Mr. Streck suggested that they come up into Borough Hall, and we also go into the hallway downstairs. And all of our fourth graders for the last 3 years we all stop when we come in the front door, and we look at the names of all of our veterans that are posted down there, and if you haven't been there, you should. And just a little piece of history, our World War I monument, which is on this end of the building, was the first monument erected in the United States to honor World War I veterans. And then we have our World War II veterans monument, which is at the other end of Borough Hall. So I think it's a good choice that the council made today to work with the veterans. And also thank Riverton, who I know is going to incorporate some of the history of the town into their project. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Are there any other questions? Yes, young lady.
Hello, Michelle Marr, 12 Gavel Road. I just wanted to, oh, this isn't good.
There you go.
Michelle Marr, 12 Gavel Road. I just wanted to, before the veterans leave, I addressed Mr. Skarzinski during the recess. He asked if anyone who was running for council what their views were, and I echo Ruth Ann 100%. I come from a family, my grandfather served in the Korean War, my father-in-law and uncle are proud members of the Legion, and that's what brings me here today, actually. At Memorial Day at the Legion, Mr. Myers had come up to me and asked if, he said that this town does not have a Vietnam memorial. And looking into it further, I don't think we do. And I'm proposing that we create one with the help of the veterans wherever they feel fit.
Okay, anything else, Michelle? Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Being no other questions or comments, I'd like the attorney to read the amendment to the ordinance. Have somebody.
This is a,
Well, let's first read the amendments to see if we're in agreement.
paragraph 7 is deleted. In terms of the new language, the only thing that will remain in this paragraph is the following language that already exists, which means street names should be chosen from the list of veterans maintained by the borough. Any and all other language within that paragraph is removed.
Is there any objection to this? Is there any objection? There being no objection, I'll close the public portion and entertain a motion. Frank, did you want to say something? Hold on a minute, Kevin.
Yeah, Frank Dozino, 32 Canal. Yeah, we talked about in the paragraph, should be, shall be, right? Never mind.
You're going to come back. Round 2, Frank. Okay. Okay, is there a motion to close the public portion and adopt the,
Mayor, I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading and advertised according to law.
Second.
roll call?
Councilpersons Delino?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
McGill?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Thank you, Sayreville veterans, for the service to our country.
Public hearing on ordinance number 460-19, bond ordinance amending ordinance number 398-18, finally adopted by the Borough Council of the Borough of Sayreville, County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey on February 26, 2018, entitled Bond Ordinance Providing for Various Road Improvements for the Borough of Sayreville, New Jersey, appropriating $3 million. Therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $2,850,000 bonds and notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation. This is to increase the total appropriation therein from $3 million to $3,575,000 due to a grant in the amount of $575,000 expected to be received from the New Jersey Department of Transportation.
This time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions on ordinance 460-19. Are there any questions? Being no questions, I'll entertain a motion. Councilman McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the public hearing be closed, the ordinance adopted on second and final reading, and advertised according to law.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons McGill?
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Next item, Terry.
Under new business, I'd like to report having received the supplemental debt statement from our CFO, Denise Biancamano, effective as of July 22nd, 2019. I need a motion to receive and file.
Next item.
Councilpersons Novak?
Yes.
Delina? Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick? McGill?
Yes.
Introduction of the following ordinances. Ordinance number 461-19, bond ordinance providing for 2019 various capital improvements by, in, and for the Borough of Sayreville, appropriating $800,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $760,000 bonds or notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation.
Councilman McGill.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the public hearing be closed.
No.
I move the ordinance be approved on first reading, advertised according to law, and a public hearing to be held on 8/19/19.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons McGill?
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Introduction ordinance number 462-19, bond ordinance providing for 2019 various park improvements in by and for the Borough of Sayreville appropriating $750,000, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $712,500 bonds or notes of the borough for financing part of such appropriation.
Councilman
Oh.
McGill.
Mayor, excuse me, I just got a question here
Yeah.
on this one. For this ordinance 462-19, I was reading over a couple of sections, and in section 3, it's but not limited to upgrades to the ball field servicing of Baumhurst basketball courts. Now, I've recently visited quite a few of the courts and fields that we have in Sayreville, and I'm kind of wondering why we would be doing Baumhurst instead of fields like basketball courts in Kennedy Park that have much more need. I do not want to hold up this ordinance by any means, but I would like to know if we could amend to maybe change some of the fields that we do or courts that we do.
Mayor, you can't do, Councilperson, or you cannot change that which is designated in this. If in fact, after this bond is approved, there's, and I know Mr. Cornell has done this before, that there's probably, you could do this at a later date, but you can't change the projects that have been identified within this bond. That would be a substantial change.
Okay, so my question to you, Mr. Novak, if we're saying we're doing Baumhurst basketball courts, does that necessarily mean that we have to do it, or we can amend that we would change?
Well, again, right now, that's specifically identified, so if you were going to make changes to those courts, that you would not be able to pass that this evening.
No, I think what he's asking is that just because we have it listed here, doesn't mean that we have to follow through and do it.
If in fact, well, I'll leave that to the engineers.
Yeah, I don't,
You have done that in the past, right? So if you pass a bond that,
I don't think you have to do the project, just because it's listed in here.
Right.
You can go through and put it toward another project, but you'd have to amend the ordinance to include
Correct.
that project.
so my suggestion is to pass the bond ordinance and then have discussion with, I guess it'd be Mr. Cornell, in terms of priority, or DPW, I guess, whoever's
I
doing it.
think we have a concern regarding this.
All right, thank you, Mr. Novak. Well, Jay, Mr. Dupont, Jay, I will be getting with you on this.
Can I ask a question? Because what it actually says in there, it strictly, it specifically notes Baumhurst, but it also says and other projects. For the residents and for everyone up here on the council, if, we have a severe safety issue in Kennedy Park regarding our basketball courts. And when you look at the Baumhurst court in comparison to the Kennedy Park court, which currently could be opened up as a third lake, right now because of the heavy rains. It's extremely dangerous. I know I received a call from our recreation director, Mr. Rust. I don't know who else on the council did. He has extreme concerns regarding that. And
Kennedy Park?
This is in Kennedy Park. It's really in bad shape. I went there today and I took pictures, and it's unacceptable. I have concern regarding possible liability here. With that being said, if it says and other projects, can we do the Kennedy Park basketball court? If there's enough money. Now, we don't have to do the Baumhurst court. I mean, Baumhurst in comparison is very simple. Would we be allowed to use what was originally identified as potential money for Baumhurst? Can we put that towards the Kennedy Park?
You would have to amend the ordinance.
You're saying you have to amend it?
You'd have to amend the ordinance to say that this money is going to be directed to Kennedy
Whatever
Park
project.
or whatever.
Dan, if,
Amend the purpose.
if you
Okay.
want to pull it and then rewrite it, you should make a motion.
It's already been advertised. Oh, no, it's an and I'm sorry, excuse me, it's an introduction. You're right, Mayor.
It's introduction.
I'm okay.
Okay.
We don't have issues. So if you want to make a motion to pull it and then review it and then.
Amend it, and then we can reintroduce it
amend
on
it,
August
that would be, we're, time-wise, we're okay, Denise?
We would have to introduce in August and then
Adopt
not
in-
approve it until September.
Right.
It'll be next year.
And then
before
your
we
money
can
would be
adopt.
available the end of September for
Okay.
spending.
Can you live with that? I mean,
Well,
you'll get the courts that need it rather than the court that doesn't need it.
But can we still get the courts without prolonging this? This is my question. This is my concern. I hate to hold up all the other projects we have in motion.
No.
So we
Just to
can't get
change.
Kennedy Park done if we don't make the change.
No, the only way to do Kennedy Park is either, you only have three ways of spending money: a bond ordinance, an emergency appropriation, or the current 2019 budget. Those are your only three choices.
And it sounds like we have to pull it.
My suggestion is to pass this ordinance, and then, if in fact the priorities have changed, come back and amend it at your next meeting, which is, well, no, you can't, so you're going to.
So it sounds like we have to,
Right, this
in
is
order
just
for
the
Kennedy
introduction.
Park to get the attention that it needs, we have to pull it from introduction, reintroduce it in August, and then move forward.
Then it'll be heard in September.
Oh, fall basketball.
May I
It's-
also have
If not, that doesn't
I
get
mean,
done.
really, if you think about it, I don't think it's going to make that much difference, because by the time we get the money, then we go out for bid, and then by the time you get the bids back, select the bids, you're into the fall anyway.
I hear what you're saying, Mayor.
We can actually, Mayor, we can actually go out to bid and just not award up until in August. Because what's going to happen now is.
You're still in the fall, Mary. My point is, summer's gone, we're into the fall.
I realize that.
So
But we
it won't be
also-
that big a
We
difference.
also don't have a cost of fixing that basketball court.
Okay? Whatever the will of the
see-
governing body is.
I would like to see us have Jay come up with some, because we had discussed this, that before we prepared this ordinance, we discussed this, that court needs substantial changes, which would make it much
Well,
more money.
why don't I make, I'd like to make a suggestion. Since Damon is in charge of recreation, pull the ordinance, let him go back to the people on the rec committee and get their input. Apparently, it was really just discussed amongst administration.
No, it was not, Mayor. Damon was involved in this.
Okay,
He was at the
okay.
meeting that made the
Mary,
decision.
we just need, I'm not casting about blame. I'm just saying, in hindsight, we could do it differently. So if you wish to do it differently, if you wish to rate the courts differently, now's the opportunity to do it.
Okay, I
So you'd make a
also,
motion to pull the ordinance for further review and recommendation.
yes, I would like to pull the ordinance for further review.
Is there a second?
I'll second that, to review it.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Enriquez,
Yes.
Delina,
Yes.
Kilpatrick,
Yes.
McGill,
Yes, with comment. I use Kennedy Park pretty often, and it's a beautiful place, and it's taken care of best as can be done by the Sayville Park Department employees. But the basketball court's falling apart. It needs to be, something needs to be done for it. It's, Vicky says, at times, this is a place that's an ice skating rink. And you know what? It's time. That's our big public park there. That's our centerpiece. So, yes.
Novak?
I'm going to say no, because, first of all, we had this meeting, and all of this was discussed, and these were chosen by the Finance Committee, and Mr. Enriquez is one of those. Matter of fact, we totally left everything in recreation up to him. What I'd like to see, and I'm only one vote, is that we approve this, and then we adopt the second ordinance to do Kennedy Park, so at least these projects could start.
Forward, yeah.
Not to interrupt, Mary, but you pretty much ran that meeting, and everything in recreation was not left up to me. That's why there's a committee, Mr. McGill, yourself, and I. And we discussed everything was not left up to me. And if I was made aware at the time of how bad Kennedy Park was, I would have made that change right there on the spot, but I was not. I actually was not even notified about that meeting. So
I don't
That's
know
where
how
I'll leave
that's
that.
possible,
All right, so let's.
but you were there, so you must have been notified of the meeting.
Let's move forward. Let's move forward.
I would like to, at this time, also recommend that we ask Jay to prepare something to say how much this is going to cost to fix this, because at the meeting, we discussed that there were a lot of underlying issues that we couldn't just, and also since Ms. Kilpatrick has stated that this is in such a bad state of repair, I would like to see that place somehow enclosed so that nobody can use it before somebody gets hurt.
Any objection? Okay, next.
Hold on.
4-1.
Ordinance number 463-19, an ordinance supplementing and amending ordinance 435-19, fixing the salaries of certain borough officials, officers, and employees for the years 19 through 22.
Councilman McGill.
Thank you again, Mayor. I move the ordinance be approved on first reading, advertised according to law, and a public hearing be held on 8/19/19.
Is there a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons McGill,
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes.
Ordinance number 464-19, an ordinance of the Borough of Sayreville authorizing the acquisition of land identified as a portion of Lot 1, Block 367.01, consisting of approximately 4.34 acres from Kalian Corp. For the purchase price of $1,430,000 or used from the borough's open space trust fund.
I move the ordinance be approved on first reading and advertised according to law for a public hearing to be held on August 19th prevailing time.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Novak?
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
McGill?
Yes.
Ordinance number 465-19, an ordinance amending and supplementing ordinance number 437-19, fixing the salaries of certain borough officials, officers, and employees for the years 2019 to 22.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I move the ordinance be approved on first reading, advertised according to law, and a public hearing to be held on August 19th.
Second.
Is there a second?
Thank you.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Kilpatrick?
Yes.
Delina? Enriquez?
Yes.
McGill?
Yes.
Novak?
Yes, I just have a question. Who exactly are these employees?
Water and sewer.
I got that, but,
First one is an employee in my office, Nicole.
okay, and who else?
That's it.
Huh?
Those are just two. Right? There's just two employees we're talking about. Yeah, one in water, one in my office.
Excuse me?
Two, one in water and one in the clerk's office.
Okay, who in water? That's a public ordinance.
Rice. We need rice.
You need rice notice when we're passing an ordinance to give somebody a salary?
You have it in writing in front of you. Oh, you need to know who, yeah.
Yeah,
Hang on, let me just pull it over here.
Give somebody a raise.
I keep trying to remember off the top of my head. It's not coming to me. It's like it's stuck in the back. Oh, yeah, who is this? You have backup with it? It's not on there.
Mary, can we get this for you after the meeting or tomorrow?
Okay, well, I'm done.
Beg your pardon?
I don't really want to vote on it if I don't know what we're talking about.
You can abstain.
I'll just
if you like.
abstain.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to pull it?
Mary's going to abstain,
I'll just abstain.
so let it
I
go.
want to vote on it when they don't know who they
Let me look at my backup.
Hold on. Can we pull this? Mary, I think you're correct, because there's a second person in water and sewer that we need to confirm something on this one.
Counselor, how do we do this?
Yep.
Just need a motion to have, well, just pull it.
We could pull it if you want, Mayor, that's fine.
It's a
We
motion
could
to
pull it.
motion to table.
Second. Well, I'm, so moved.
Someone has to make
I
the
need a
motion.
So moved. Mayor, you want to second it? Okay.
Roll call?
Hang on, I got it back up here. So,
Who wrote that?
Council Kilpatrick, who seconded the motion to pull?
Mary.
Mary did.
Okay, Councilpersons Kilpatrick,
Yes.
Delina, Enriquez,
Yes.
McGill,
Yes.
Novak.
Yes.
Okay. With that, I'm going to open the public portion for the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? Mr. Block? No, you have no questions. All things become clear when you attend the council meeting. Are there any questions? Being no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I move the public portion be closed and the consent agenda resolutions be approved. A roll call vote.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Delina.
Yes.
Enriquez.
Yes.
Kilpatrick. McGill.
Yes.
Mayor, have the following resolutions to be read in full. Resolution 2019-241, be it resolved that the following persons are hereby appointed in following titles and departments as per New Jersey Civil Service Commission procedures. Name of appointees, Brianna Cortez, Hai Long, and Alexander Martins to the positions of police officers in the police department. Effective date is August the 5th, 2019. Be it further resolved that the compensation to be paid such appointee shall be fixed and determined by salary ordinance or appropriate resolution adopted thereunder fixing the compensation to be paid municipal employees for that appointment be made subject to rules and regulations of the New Jersey Civil Service Commission.
This time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions on 2019-241. Are there any questions? Being no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I move the ordinance be approved on roll call, the resolution be approved on roll call vote.
So the public is closed.
Close the public portion and
then-
adopt.
Okay. So moved.
Roll call, second,
I got it.
Vicky, second, roll call.
Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Delina.
Yes.
Enriquez.
Yes.
Kilpatrick.
Yes.
McGill.
Yes.
Resolution 219-242, a resolution approving and authorizing the issuance of a special event permit to Dwal Akram School to hold a prayer service, whereas Dwal Akram School has requested permission from the mayor and council of the borough of Sayreville to conduct a prayer service in Kennedy Park on August the 11th, 2019, whereas it is the belief of the governing body that these events provide activities where families and communities are gathered. whereas the mayor and council also agree that this event proposed will enhance the community spirit, and whereas the Dwal Aquam School must notify the Saraville Police Department, the Public Works Department, Recreation Department, and Saraville Emergency Squad at least 7 days prior to the said event. And now therefore be it and is hereby resolved that the Dwal Aquam School is hereby granted permission to hold a special event, and that a permit be issued to the prayer, to conduct a prayer service on August the 11th, 2019, from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Kennedy Park, and that any associated services through the Department of Public Works, Police Department, and which fees have been incurred will be billed at a later date. Be it further resolved that they must adhere to all of the recommendations made by the police department following a meeting held on, and I just have to get the date from Dan, there was a meeting held, that will be filled in, I apologize for that, but that's the only thing that had been left out, and they must comply with that, with these requests.
Okay, at this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or comments. Jim? Okay. Are there any questions or comments on 2019-242? There being no questions or comments, I'll entertain a motion to close the
Mayor?
public portion and to adopt on roll call.
I move the public portion be closed and the resolution be adopted on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call?
That was Councilman Enriquez?
No.
I'm sorry, I have to get used to the voices coming from where. I apologize. Councilpersons Novak,
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Kilpatrick?
Yes.
McGill?
Yes.
And our CFO has a resolution to be read in full also.
We have one more?
Yeah, that's
19-242.
right, that one's
She's got it.
Okay.
Just to give you a little bit of background on it, what happens is the library is looking to install a new circulation desk, a new storage unit, and a new reference desk. Because these are custom pieces, there's a 10-week lead time. The money is going to be in ordinance 461-19, but in order for the library to move forward sooner, they're willing to cut a purchase order against their actual money in their operating budget in order for the desks and all to be ordered. And what they're asking is that the council approve a resolution to reimburse the library when the funds are available through that ordinance. So this is just the legality I have to read, and council has to take action.
Okay, does this meet all legal requirements?
Does it? Yes, this is bond council wrote this resolution.
At this time, I'm going to open the public portion for questions or
He
comments.
has to read it in
Gotta read
full.
the
Oh, you
whole
gotta read it.
resolution.
Wait a minute, now you explained it.
Okay, sorry. Resolution of the Borough of Saraville in the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, declaring its official intent to reimburse expenditures for the acquisition and installation of a circulation desk, reference desk, and storage unit for the library from the proceeds of federally tax-exempt bonds and/or bond anticipation notes. Whereas the Borough of Saraville in the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, plans to acquire and install a circulation desk, reference desk, and storage unit for the borough's public library, and whereas the borough plans to expend monies for the project prior to issuance of any obligations, and whereas the borough intends to finance the project through the issuance of bonds and/or bond anticipation notes of the borough, but will pay for certain costs of the project prior to the issuance of the obligations with funds of the borough that are not borrowed funds, and whereas the borough reasonably anticipates that the obligations, the interest on which is expected to be excluded from gross income under Section 103 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 as amended, will be issued to finance the project, and whereas the borough desires to preserve its right to treat all or a portion of proceeds of the obligations to the reimbursement of project costs paid prior to the issuance of the obligations as an expenditure for such project costs to be reimbursed for purposes of the code. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the governing body of the Borough of Saraville in the County of Middlesex, State of New Jersey, as follows. Section 1, the borough reasonably expects to reimburse its expenditures for project costs paid prior to the issuance of the obligations with proceeds of the obligations. Section 2, this resolution is a declaration of the borough's official intent to reimburse the expenditures for project costs paid by the borough prior to the issuance of the obligations with the proceeds of such obligations in accordance with Treasury Regulation 150-2. Section 3, the maximum principal amount of the obligations expected to be utilized to reimburse the borough for expenditures for project costs shall not exceed $35,000. Section 4, the expenditures for project costs to be reimbursed with the proceeds of the obligations will be capital expenditures in accordance with the meaning of the code. Section 5, no reimbursement allocation will employ an abusive arbitrage device under Treasury Regulations 1.148-10 to avoid the arbitrage restrictions or to avoid the restrictions under Section 142 through 147 inclusive of the code. The proceeds of the obligations used to reimburse the borough for capital expenditures related to the project or funds corresponding to such amounts will not be used in a manner that results in the creation of replacement proceeds, including sinking funds, pledged funds, or funds subject to a negative pledge, as such terms as defined in Treasury Regulations 1.148-1 of the obligations or another issue of obligations of the borough other than amounts deposited into a bona fide debt service fund. Section 6, all reimbursement allocations will occur not later than 18 months after the later of the date of the expenditure of project costs from a source other than the obligation is paid, or the date the project is placed in service or abandoned, but in no event more than 3 years after the expenditure is paid. This resolution shall take effect immediately. Whew.
Is there a motion?
No, we need to open.
Oh, wait a minute, yeah. Those of you that paid attention, do you have any questions? Those of you who didn't pay attention, do you have any questions? There being no questions, I'll entertain a motion to close the public portion.
Mayor, I move the public portion be closed and the resolution be approved on roll call vote.
Second.
Roll call?
Yes.
Delina?
Yes.
Enriquez?
Yes.
Patrick?
Yes.
McGill?
Yes.
Borough Attorney's report?
No report, Mayor.
Thank you. Borough Engineers report? Thank you. Public portion, questions or comments, Jim, on any and all issues?
Thank you, Mayor. Jim Robinson, 11 Burrell Square. I did have a question on that other ordinance. Does a circulation desk go round and round? Is that?
I feel like I went round and round.
Mayor, I appreciated very much that those veterans were here earlier. A lot of those folks fought for democracy 20, 30, 40, some of them even 70 years ago. So it was great to see that they were here practicing democracy tonight. There's a young student in the audience who's here to earn a merit badge, and I think it was great for him to see what happened today. I am here to talk about specifically 464-19, but I just want to very quickly comment on what my friend Mr. Rittenhouse said. At the last meeting, I merely asked Mr. Frankel if the mayor had a meeting with Mr. Mako. I didn't know about that agreement. Mayor, you said the agreement only came to fruition afterwards. I think it was sent to you later, so there was no agreement at that time. There was nothing to know about, so I certainly didn't know about it. I didn't ask about it. My only comment on that, and I have no problem with the mayor meeting with Mr. Mako. In fact, I set up a meeting with Mr. Mako and the mayor 20 years ago on another plan that, if it had been more successful, might have ended that litigation 20 years ago and $1.5 million ago. But so I have no problem with the mayor meeting with Mr. Mako. My only comment on that is if an agreement is to be signed on anything, it ought to be an agreement that the borough attorney drafts, not that Mr. Mako or his attorneys draft. But what I'm really here to talk about and to thank the members of the governing body, especially those who were here last year and the year before when all of this started, I'm here to talk about 464-19, the ordinance that provides for that almost 4.5 acres that was previously subject of the COA litigation that once upon a time, before things were changed and improved, was going to be the location for about 150 apartments. As you all recall, there were 300 apartments slated to go on Ernston Road after the council redid what had been done originally. Two wonderful things happened, especially with respect to Ernston Road. That was cut down to 150 from 300, so it was cut in half. And 4.5 of those acres that Mr. Kaplan owned, he has agreed to sell to the borough to be an extension of Kennedy Park, and money will be used from the Open Space Fund. And when that Open Space Fund was created many, many years ago, this is exactly what we had envisioned. We envisioned that we would take money, that we would buy property that would otherwise be developed, and it would have been high-density development over there, and it would be preserved as open space. In this case, it's going to be part of Kennedy Park. So it took a very long time in coming. I thank the entire council. I especially thank those who were on the council a couple of years ago, including some of you who are no longer here, for everything that you did to make this happen. Mr. Dupont, I thank you because I know this was not easy and certain agreements needed to be obtained prior to this. So I think this is a wonderful thing. I think, you know, the thing they say about land is they're not making it anymore. So that we could get almost 4.5 acres and add it to Kennedy Park and preserve it, I think is a wonderful thing. And I thank you all very much for that.
Ruth Ann?
Ruth Ann Mahoney, 2 Gerard Place. I want to say thank you very much for the open space for Kennedy Park. I'm very happy. Thank you. And the residents around me in that area also, thank you very much. It reduces the residential buildings. Thank you.
Fred?
Thank you, Mayor. Fred Block, 25 Calliope Road. I have notes, so I apologize in advance. The basketball courts thing, I just want to understand, this was put out publicly. The people who live on that street were of the impression that their basketball court was going to be fixed or corrected or whatever. Is that no longer happening?
Nothing in the recreation department is happening.
Nothing in various parks.
No various parks are being improved at all.
Well, that's not true. I mean, we just needed to make sure that Kennedy Park would also be addressed. And right now, it wouldn't have been with the way it was. So nothing's been necessarily taken off, but we have to address how severe the Kennedy Park.
No, and I hear that and understand, and I think where I got confused is it sounded like there was a discussion about taking the money from the Bamehurst project and moving it to the Kennedy Park project, when I think that might have been premature when we don't even know where the costs are, right?
Right.
But I think we should be careful because, you know, some people may see that as a slight, especially when they were under the impression and maybe excited that their neighborhood basketball courts were going to be fixed or corrected, and now that might not happen. So I think it would be potentially viewed as negative. I just wanted to understand that. There's been a lot of talk about the streets in Sayreville, and you know I've stood here before and pontificated about this numerous times. I know that recently there was a sinkhole on French Street, which somebody I think actually might have gotten hurt on or something. But anyway, I commend the DPW. It's my understanding they did come out the following day immediately and address the issue. But I do have to say, and it's good to hear that you guys are going to the basketball courts and everything, I think every one of you should drive through Tangletown 10 times over and over every street. And you're gonna find that there are some roads that you literally need to have an ATV or a 4x4 truck to get through. French Street being one of them. I can't actually drive my car on French. There's a manhole that's so high there that it literally hits the bottom of my car. So you guys should be, you're very aware of the basketball courts, and that's good, but you should also be aware collectively of Tangletown and how poor the roads are over there.
Right now, we have it in the road budget to do Algier, Smullen, and Church. French Street is a different problem. We've only been making temporary repairs because we must attain easements to fix that road. And as of yet, the residents have not given us the easements.
Jacob,
That's why French Street is not included.
yeah, Jay could probably speak more on that. 'cause
And that's
I agree
interesting
with you.
because if we're going to fight to get the roads fixed, then everybody kind of has to suck it up a little bit and make it work.
Can Jay? would
Yeah, I
you
think that the
mind?
problem you referred to, there's a trench drain that goes across the entire roadway that's been a problem for years, and the borough has been attempting to redo that roadway, but in order to do that, they have to get easements to take the water from Front Street over to Albert Street. So we've got to jog along property lines and install pipe. The borough obtained 2 easements, and I think there's 2 that are still outstanding. So there was money that was set aside for that project years ago because there was not, the borough was not able to acquire the easements. I think that money was used for other projects, so based upon the recent problems, I think the borough is going to go back and look at acquiring the other 2 easements and moving forward with the project.
Yeah, I know personally someone who lives right there that would probably be very appreciative of that, and I know I would be because I have to go out of my way and come around the back way because I can't go down French with my own car. So anyway, no need to belabor that. I just wanted to bring it up for discussion that everybody is fully aware that the roads need addressing in town, and I do see additional budgets being put towards the roads. That's really good. Pulaski was definitely a win. And, you know, I know MacArthur is on the ticket, especially for motorcyclists, by the way. MacArthur is nearly deadly. But then again, so is Cross Ave. but
We
won't
just
touch on
went
that.
out, we just opened the bids for MacArthur, right, Jay?
Actually, you just awarded the contract.
Yep, tonight.
Yeah, to Z Brothers or something, I
Yeah.
thought I saw. But that, I also touch on Cross, which is still very dangerous. And I know a source of contention because of legalities, but I mean, if we're plowing it and we're doing other things to maintain the road, and if we're patching it, I think we should pave it. It's really bad. But anyway, I wanted to clarify what went down tonight a little bit with regard to the mayor's agreement with Mr. Mako. If I understood when it was being explained, this was nothing that was officially executed and put into play, that it would require it be approved by the council. Is that what I heard correctly?
No.
That's not what it says.
That's what I thought I heard. I thought that it was something that was a preliminary step towards making it happen. Is it a done deal, or I'd like to...
If the council accepts it, it's done. If they don't accept it, it's like it never happened.
Well,
So
what we
it
authorized.
was a short window of opportunity, and I had limited options, other than it was stated here publicly that in meetings with Mr. Mako, he was not going to entertain any cooperation with the borough and his property with the completion of the Main Street bypass. When I was meeting with him in my office down the hallway, and the meeting was coming to a close, I said, Mr. Mako, you do have something that the borough would like. He said, what was that? And I said, your property that would be used in the Main Street extension. And he was very amicable to giving us the right-of-way. And I had 48 hours to make it happen. So, and that was 5 o'clock on the evening of the 8th, let's say. And I had till 4 o'clock,
July 10th.
what,
July 10th.
on July 10th to make, it was either gonna go or no go.
So he was only offering it for 48 hours?
Yep, it was a 48-hour offer.
So if I understand correctly, and maybe I don't, you signed something that is getting put into, it's moving forward?
What it does is,
Right,
it
that's what I'm
takes,
saying.
it takes a property's owner position from negative to positive, without any borough costs, without any borough responsibility. And it's well known, I mean, it's been stated here in this room many times, that we all know it's contaminated property. So I was not looking to
Well known
own
to
it.
me. I had no idea.
Yeah.
But it doesn't sound like to me that the project
We
is
don't know
moving
the
forward.
level or the severity of the contamination. Contamination is an all-encompassing word. So I was trying to make a good deal for the borough in a very short amount of time, without obligating the borough for any environmental concerns, There was no transfer of money. There was no promise of a transfer of money. There was simply a promise that we would have access.
And that's what I thought I understood. So,
Yeah.
so again, my recap of this is, and I don't want this to come across harshly, but there was a great deal of grandstanding about this. And if I understand correctly, this was an option that's available to us. If I'm not understanding that, and that means we haven't spent a dime, we haven't started any process of moving forward to make something happen with it. If it's an option and we haven't done anything with it, I don't understand the serious cause for concern and for the uproar that it caused.
It wouldn't have been, you do understand that the mayor made an agreement in a room with a man, did not tell any of us about it. He had some kind of agreement drafted. Now we're finding out you had a couple of days to get this agreement drafted and made, and he knew that the land he was taking from Mr. Mako was contaminated.
We
But
don't
it was
own-
just
we
an
don't
option.
own the land.
It's
Listen,
just an option, right? It's not
really?
like we're doing something. It's not like we're obligated to do something. It's not that we have to build on that land. We have to move forward with it. We have to do the clearing of it. It's just an option.
No,
We
no.
haven't moved that,
I would
right?
like the last time the exact same type of agreement was signed by the mayor, just like this, we were obligated, in the eyes of the judge, to build hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of COA units. If you're okay with that as a resident, that the mayor went into a room, signed an
This is
agreement.
not even comparable, though, because
It could be.
but it's not, because again,
How is
from
it
what I'm
not?
hearing, we are not obligated to proceed. It costs nothing.
Who's
It's an
telling
option.
you it's, I would love to test that. I don't want to test that in a court of law because we've had similar situations. And as of this evening, the mayor still we had yet to see it, hear about it, or know about it. When were we going to find out about it? When we were slapped with a bill of environmental cleanup? When the bypass gets created and built? That this document comes up and says, oh yeah, back on, the 10th
Wouldn't
in
that have been
2000.
discovered before then, though?
It wasn't discovered
Because you
until
wouldn't have been
now.
able to build or move forward
We
with that
wanna talk
project
ab-
without having the
Do
permission
you want
to
to
do
talk
so.
about suppositions now, or would you rather have what should have happened?
Confused.
What should have happened? The attorney having the conversations with the developer, I still would like to know who drafted that agreement. I have no idea who drafted that agreement. We have a borough attorney. I'm elected here to do a job. And the mayor took that away from us, from every one of us. He's elected.
If he
We
had
don't know
signed
anything
something-
about this agreement.
If he had signed something that put something into action that cost us money, that was irreversible, I would agree with you. But until then, I feel that we're grandstanding this. And let's
You
be
can feel that
transparent,
way.
like you were suggesting.
I am.
You were running for mayor.
Yes, everybody knows that.
Right. So I'm just saying, let's be transparent. And it seemed to me, and again, I know I'm not trying to create this contention, but it seemed like it was being grandstanded and maybe blown out of proportion when it's nothing that we were obligated to move forward with. That's all. That's my honest assessment of what
We
I'm
don't
hearing
know
so
if
far.
we would be obligated to move forward with it, because do you want the agreement tested in a court of law? Is that what you're asking for,
No,
Mr.
I
Block?
thought,
I don't know.
Mr. DuPont made it clear that this was not holding us obligated to do anything. Is that what I thought I heard correctly?
This agreement is an agreement, it's entitled an agreement to execute an easement for right-of-way for the Main Street bypass. It gives us the right, for purposes of locating therein the Main Street bypass roadway, including pipes, utilities, laterals, related appurtenances, together with the right to erect, construct, use, install, impair, repair, remove, maintain, and preserve said roadway. It also calls for us to hold harmless and defend Mr. Mako from liability claims, damages, matters, or suits arising from grantees' exercise of rights and privileges contained therein.
So it's giving us the right to use it. It's not holding us in any way obligated to use it, and it's not costing the borough any money.
At this point, At this point in time, this is the agreement, the words that I just read.
Got it. That's all I really need. And
Can you
again,
read that last line again?
Read,
Can you read that last line?
well, the very last line of this says, "I accept this right-of-way easement on the behalf of the borough of Sayreville."
it's a right of way. It's only
Okay.
accepting that we have the ability to build on it.
Okay,
And if
but-
I own the land, I would
Yeah, but it
probably
says-
want to be held, I would not want to be held responsible either. So it does, but it still doesn't say that we have to move forward with it. It's an option.
You're very brave because you're willing to roll the dice on something
I'm not
that
rolling
I'm
any
not.
dice. I'm just, look, honestly, I'm taking what I've heard and I'm making a somewhat reasonable, assessment of what I heard. And what
Do
I'm
you
hearing
wanna
is
read
we are
that?
not obligated to do anything.
Councilwoman Kilpatrick, or Councilwoman Novak, do you want to read that line again?
When I read, seriously.
When you
this is-
when you buy a house from the previous owner, they want to make sure that you're not going to go back after them. And there's probably plenty of legal, wording in the contracts that said you can't hold them responsible anymore.
If I want to
That's all
take a
he's doing.
personal risk on the purchase of a home that
But
I'm
we're
buying,
not
that's
purchasing
fine.
this. We're
No,
not
no.
purchasing this.
Listen to
It's
me.
an option.
Listen to me. I'll take the risk as an individual about whether or not I'm going to hold somebody responsible or if I can go after them. I am not going to take that risk with 46,000 residents and hope that this doesn't hold
But
water.
that's if we move forward. If we move forward with this project, what's going to have to happen before we do that?
Why don't you read the lines again? You don't have the agreement in front of you, so you.
You gotta read it. If
Read
you
it,
read
Fred.
it, you'll see why we have real
concerned.
problems with it, because I don't understand if this is just
I hear
an
you,
agreement to
but-
make an agreement, why are we indemnifying this person?
if
Why
we
wouldn't
are-
that be in the agreement?
Because he's
that the-
not charging us for the property, would be my fair assessment. If he's not charging us for the land, then why should he be responsible to remediate
To clean it up?
Why should he be responsible if he's saying, you have full right of way to it, I'm not gonna charge you for it, but,
That-
you're
you know,
responsible,
you're
that's
right.
all.
I agree. It's a
Okay.
great deal for Mr. Mako, but it isn't for the residents
Wait a
of
minute, wait a
Sayreville.
minute. Again,
You just
guys
said it.
are basically, I'm saying, has anybody approved the extension yet? No. It's not approved, nothing has been done. All this is an option that we can act on, that's all I'm hearing.
You just said it perfectly, Fred, and we could roll it back later, that, of course, Mr. Mako doesn't want to be held responsible for something. Thank you. It puts all the responsibility on us.
If we proceed.
You're right.
If we approve and choose to proceed, then yes, it does.
So
And
why
I'm not arguing
not?
that.
So how about this, Fred? This is my comment about it.
You have the right to
Ex-
say no.
Well, excuse me, here's my comment. The proper way this should have been handled was this should have been brought to us to discuss. And then, as a council, one of my recommendations to our attorney would be, can you make sure that there is specific language in here that doesn't hold the borough liable for any environmental cleanups in the event that we move forward with it? See, that's a smart way to protect. This doesn't
If he was
exist.
selling the land, I would fully agree with you, but it doesn't
You're-
sound like that's happening. It sounds like he is giving us, for no cost, the ability to use a right-of-way, and is only asking that because there is no cost, and he is not making anything from that, that he's not held responsible for remediation.
So who's
And I don't
held
think that's-
responsible for remediation?
We would be.
We would be if we
Thank
chose
you.
to go. We would
Thank
be
you.
if we chose to go forward with it.
Thank you.
That's all.
You answered my question. You
Yes,
just told
and-
everybody
and
who would be
you
held
can't argue that
responsible.
It's if
The
we choose to
residents.
go forward.
Who would be held responsible? Fred, you answered your own questions. If we decide
If we
to
choose
move
to go forward,
we would be held responsible.
Yes, if
Thank
we
you.
chose to go
And
forward,
it doesn't
we would be held
have to be that way. If
Why
the
did we even
agreement was
bother to
written
sign
in a way that protected the borough, that wouldn't be an option. That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Thank you, Fred. I appreciate your
And I
clarity on
appreciate you
that.
also understanding that we're not obligated to do anything with the property at
Unless
all.
we move forward.
That's right.
That was your
If
statement,
you
and
move
I
forward,
don't want to
If you
move
choose to take
forward.
that offer.
We could take we should have been allowed as a council to write an agreement that protects us. Mr. Block, you stated exactly why I'm opposed to this agreement, and I want the borough attorney
Okay.
to go back and clean this up, so we don't have to.
All I wanted was a clarification, and I got what I needed. Thank you. With that said, another issue, and this will be the last one that I'm going to discuss, it appears as though the water issue in town is back in the news, and there's another mention of some of Sayreville being listed on a list of contaminated water sources in the state of New Jersey. And I want to bring up that Mr. Rittenhouse, a few years back during his re-election bid, was crucified by members of the party that were attacking him. I don't even want to get into it. It's a fact that at a meeting, it was Harry-Carry pandemonium over how we are neglecting this and neglecting that, and Mr. Rittenhouse didn't do anything. I want to know now what has been done since then that addresses all of the concerns. That's what I'd like to know.
Thank you so much for bringing this up. And I want to say that, and I don't want to make this political, but you do mention the politics of before.
I'm bringing it up because it was an
Yeah.
attack. That has nothing to do.
Well,
Why I'm seriously
attack or not,
asking what has been done to correct the issue, because I have
I'm
not heard.
very excited to report a couple of things. Number one, I wish that I just took on water and sewer proudly this year, starting in January. And within the first couple of weeks of me taking on the liaison to water and sewer, I went and I toured our facility. It's one of the most magnificent and impressive facilities around. We're actually a state-of-the-art facility, second to none, with very, very unique features. It was interesting because when I met with the director, I was told that I was the first elected official, the first, to ever visit the water and sewer treatment facility and utilities here. So that meant that the entire time that Mr. Rittenhouse was on the council and was serving as water and sewer liaison, he never stepped foot in the utilities buildings at all, ever. I went there within 2 weeks.
I'm curious,
Excuse me,
though,
I'm not
what
done
about-
yet.
what about
You asked me a
beforehand?
question.
What about beforehand?
So I can only speak as to what I've done
Well, that's
so
what
far.
I'm asking. I'm not asking with regard to you, and it seems like we're having a private conversation. I'm
Well,
asking
you
the
could-
council.
Oh, you don't
that-
want to hear what I have to say? Okay, that's
no,
fine.
I'm asking the council. I absolutely don't have a problem with hearing what you have to say.
Oh, but I was answering your question.
But you're jumping to today. What I'm asking is,
Oh, okay.
immediately following that election, what was done to put in processes to change what had happened then? That's what I
I
want to know.
wasn't on the water and sewer. I don't want to speak on behalf
No,
of that,
because-
but I
because
can
that's
tell you
I'm
what I've
saying.
done.
I really
would
just
like
want to
to s-
understand, because, again, there was mass pandemonium, mass Harry-Carry, flyers sent to every home in the borough about how this was horrible, people were in a panic, and then after that election, I don't recall hearing anything about it. So I'm trying to understand what was done immediately following that up until now. And it sounds to me, like you say you can't speak, but what was done between when you started and the past? Does anybody
Well-
have anything to?
What I would do, because I don't want to, me personally, what I would recommend is let us turn around and go to our supervisors of water and sewer, as well as our superintendent of our Duhernal Water Treatment Plant, along with our engineer, to come up with something thorough for you, so that way you can see that. I don't want to misspeak. I don't want to turn around and miss out on something that we've done. You don't want to hear what I've done so far, and I'm not certain
that's
why.
not a problem. I do want to
But-
hear what you've done so far. I'm trying to understand what led to this year. Because
What do you
that
mean,
was
what led
like
to
when
this
you
year?
when you took over, that's great. I'm glad you're doing something.
Yeah.
What was done immediately following the election?
I think the best thing to do, Mr. Frankel, can you turn around and contact our water and sewer supervisors?
So did
Work
somebody
with-
on the council not drive this
I
process
believe,
forward?
who was it? Mr. Gorillo, was he also on water and sewer? He's not here to speak on behalf of that. I think he took over after Mr. Rittenhouse, but I'm not 100% sure of that. I think that was accurate, that he served as the water and sewer liaison. That's why I don't want to speak without having that information. That I like to speak intelligently when I can. I can only tell you what I've done, and Mr. Gorillo is not here to speak on what he did.
Okay, and thank you for that background, and I appreciate the offer to look for more information. And now please continue. I'm sorry I interrupted. I'd like to hear more about what
Well,
is
one
being
of the
done.
things that we definitely had to do was take a look at the way some of the things were being handled. So we made some employee decisions, and we definitely went in and made sure now that we have people in the right positions doing the right amount of work. One of the biggest things that we needed to do was work on our securities, and I'm proud to say that using grant money, we're actually securing that facility free, so that way it's posed with less of a threat to our drinking water and also to our treatments and so forth. I've been working with Mr. Samuels of CME, and at times, Jay, not so much. I think I'm working with an associate of yours also in order to make sure that the different things that we do as far as, I don't want to say it the wrong way, because again, this is where the language arts teacher, I'm specifically not a water and sewer treatment person. Our supervisors are working to make sure that our collections and that our, distribution and our treatment is running at or above whatever the state levels are. I think we just sent out our last water report, when was it, a couple of weeks ago, the actual breakdown, and all of those numbers were within the state standards and levels. But we continue to improve that. We also look into filtrations. It's difficult for us because we can't put out an actual, every resident should buy this particular type of filtration system, but we're looking into what can we tell residents as far as things and options that you have. I talk to my supervisors constantly. Mr. Frankel and I just had another meeting with our diurnal supervisor, well, actually superintendent, to make sure that we're continuing to work on the possibility of actually treating and selling water one day, doing additional remediations of wells within that site to make sure that they're up and running. I'm living, breathing, and eating water and sewer. I have to say, I kind of wish when I came in that I was given a mop when I first took on the liaison position, because there was a lot of things that needed to be addressed. But our professionals are working well. We'll get you that information. I can't speak intelligently on what Mr. Grillo's doing, but I know that the employees know that we're here for them now. And that's finally become a feature. We also have the largest solar field at our diurnal water station, which is, I think, online now. So one of the other things that we're able to do is supplement the cost of the power that we're using over there, which is a cost saving to the borough. That's exciting. So there's a lot of wonderful things that have been going on since the exit of Mr. Rittenhouse.
I'd like to thank everybody for my time and for answering my questions and for your patience dealing with my sometimes short delivery. Thanks, everybody. Sorry for being so long.
Fred, at the end of the meeting, I just want to talk to you about how we've addressed people donating property to us before that might be contaminated. Maybe you'll understand why we're upset. But I don't want to take up this time. I'll talk to you at the end of the meeting. Thank you.
The fellow behind Arthur had his hand. And then Arthur.
Hi, my name is Tom DeSimone. I moved to Sayreville, actually 13 Gardner Place.
One second, just so she can sit down and check your name and your address.
I apologize. That's okay. Tom DeSimone, 13 Gardner Place in Parlin, New Jersey. I moved 3 years ago. I have a 3.5-year-old and a 1-year-old daughter. Now, this contamination is a little bit of a concern now. Quick question. If I, as a homeowner, have contaminated land, what would you guys tell me to do? So, if this guy's coming to do a deal and the land's contaminated, why won't anybody just turn around and say, clean it up now, or something has to be done? The guy can't walk away out of the office knowing that you have contaminated land that goes into the soil.
It's my understanding that he didn't put the contaminants there. So I think.
But is he the owner of the property?
Yes, but I think that's where, and that's what I found out, which made this agreement even more complicated. The property owner, I don't know if he's in litigation or if he's working with the parties that contaminated the property. His assertion is, I didn't contaminate my land. They did, and they should be held responsible. So that's, and then we're entering into an agreement that's giving us something that's like this chain.
But even now that it's known, shouldn't everybody be turning around and saying, listen, we got I know a lot of people around Portland is moving in with children, small little children. Contamination, air we breathe should be non-negotiable.
I agree.
Non-negotiable.
I agree. It needs to be cleaned up by whomever put it there and who's ever liable.
So I just can't wrap my head around it.
I agree.
If I had land and everybody finds out I now have contamination on my land,
I just found out about it, I didn't know. The mayor was told about it at the meeting, as he stated here publicly. My first reaction when I found out about
I do
it,
need to interject. There was a woman from Main Street Townhomes, Lisa, I can't remember Lisa's last name, but she stated this for the record, that this was, in her conversations with Peter Mako, that this was contaminated property. This is on the public record. This is not a secret.
No.
But like I said before, contamination is a very broad term. So you can have small contamination, huge contamination. We don't know to what extent the property is contaminated or is contaminated with what substance. So I just wanted to clarify that. Lisa stood where you stood and talked about her conversation with Mr. Mako, and that, through her research and through conversations with him, identified the property as being contaminated. This was never a secret. This was, pretty public knowledge when you say it here.
That doesn't have an obligation now, that's all out. Starting tomorrow.
Right.
Do what you gotta do to go clean it up.
Well, it's a nice theory, but it's far more complicated than that.
So what's usually the process now that you find the landowner has contamination of property?
Jay, you want to do a brief primer on how?
If I'm a landowner, I have contamination. Now, the borough found out I have contamination that could affect children and families in the area. What is the process now?
Typically, it's not a borough issue. Usually, the State Department of Environmental Protection gets involved with the contamination. They'll have studies done to find out what the limits of contamination are. They'll make you hire a professional to go through and conduct those studies. That professional will come and make recommendations as to how the property can be cleaned up, and it's all coordinated through the state.
And what's usually the time frame? Is this years, months, days?
It depends on the degree of contamination, but it could be years.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Arthur?
Arthur Rittenhouse, 33 Delacat Lane, Main Street Townhomes. As far as the contamination on that piece of property, when I was on the council, I mentioned it. Main Street Townhomes about 2 years ago when they posted a sign that it was contaminated. We came and asked the Borough Council about it. There is a company that has been working on that. That has been contaminated since 1996. This is nothing new, that piece of land. And so that's, as far as the bypass and the right-of-way and the agreement, at the meeting on the 10th, when Mary was running the meeting, I asked you to ask Mr. Frankel about the meeting that the mayor had. Mr. Frankel had that agreement. He signed the agreement. Is his signature on that agreement, Mary? Yes, it is. Thank you. The business administrator...
You obviously know who signed this. I love it.
Yes, I do.
You knew who signed it, but the people that were elected up here never knew anything.
Mary, I'm talking. Will you please stop? No, Mary does this all the time. And I tell her all the time. When I have my time, then you can have yours. That agreement was, I knew that the mayor had met with Mr. Mako, and he had asked me as chairman of the bypass committee what I thought, and I thought it was good because that would overcome the problem of having a right-of-way. Because Mr. Mako, as Lisa from the advisory committee had said, Mr. Mako in no way was going to allow any bypass to go through that property. I had asked Mary to ask Mr. Frankel. Mr. Frankel was not allowed to answer that question. Vicky, you didn't allow him or ask him. I said to him, you know about it. Why don't you say something? And nobody allowed Mr. Frankel to speak at that, watch the videotape at that meeting. So you could have known all about it on July 10th. But instead, you would rather wait and have a big to-do about it now. Did you know about it at the July 10th meeting, Mr. Frankel? Mr. Mayor, can you ask Mr. Frankel if he knew about it on the July 10th meeting? About the agreement. Thank you. So that, so nothing really was hidden. The job of the business administrator is to inform the mayor and council. That's his job. He runs the town on a daily basis. That's what a business administrator does.
Mr. Rittenhouse, can I ask you a question respectfully? May I ask you a question respectfully?
Yes.
Okay. The fact that the mayor thought enough to inform you and apparently others, it would have been nice if the mayor showed the respect for the elected officials to inform us as well.
The mayor answered that question.
Excuse me, no, it's not a
The mayor answered
question.
that question.
Okay, so the respect didn't extend to the elected officials
Yes,
here.
it did. He answered that question.
He actually called you, specifically asked you for your personal input about this document,
If it was done.
but he
Yes.
did not afford us that same opportunity.
He answered that question.
That's problematic.
He answered
Thank
that
you.
question.
Thank you, and so did you, thank you.
Okay, on 46419, this is the purchase of the land with the open space money. That land was evaluated, is my understanding, as land where houses could be built, which is the highest appraisal value. It's not going to be used for houses, it's going to be used as part of the park, which is wonderful, and I have no problem with that. But we're all concerned about pollution. Have we checked to see if there's any pollution from the rail line that runs through there before we go ahead and do this? Are there any documents that show this? Mayor, are there any documents that show whether it's polluted or not?
We did a Phase 1 environmental, and it came back relatively negative. The problem has been the property is landlocked by the railroads, and the owner, Mr. Kaplan, could not provide a right-of-way. And my understanding is that very recently, within the last week or days, he was able to locate his right-of-way from the railroad. He did provide it to the borough. The proper thing now is for us to do a Phase 2 environmental test on the property and determine, A, if it's contaminated, and if it is, to what extent, and what the probable cost would be.
So we
I
could
mean,
have,
that would
we
be
could
a
have
normal
expenses
business approach.
to clean this up.
I beg your pardon?
Or as the ordinance says, it'll be his responsibility, but as I mentioned before, since 1996, Mr. Mako has had a chance to clean up the property behind Main Street Townhomes and has not done it. The DEP has forced him to do it and has that group coming in.
Well, the other question I have is, are we allowed to buy contaminated property with open space funds? And I don't know the answer to that question.
That's something the attorney would have to.
And just so, Ruth Ann, you should be aware, I asked, in the meeting I had with Mr. Mako, when he was so generous to give us this right-of-way and not obstruct the Main Street bypass, as he said he would, I asked him what he owns 40 acres of Kennedy, in Kennedy Park, in the northeast corner. And I asked him, as long as I was fishing, I might as well try to catch a big fish. And he said his plans are to develop that into a bit of a transit village with a great many apartments and retail space. So these are his plans. So it's kind of this whole thing of buying 4.5 acres of landlocked property is kind of a Pyrrhic victory,
All right, now, Fulton's.
Are you saying, Mayor, that you wouldn't have purchased that land for open space? No, he wouldn't have. Are you saying that you wouldn't have purchased that land?
I don't know, hey, I don't know what we're buying.
Well, we bought
I don't
open
know whether
space.
it's clean, not clean, and if it isn't clean, to what degree it's not clean. I don't know how much, if it is contaminated, what the cleanup cost is, who's responsible for the cleanup cost. What I do know is it's landlocked property, 4.5 acres of landlocked property surrounded by a railroad. And we had it appraised at a residential value, which is the highest value. So we're paying $1.5 million for 4.5 acres of what we believe is contaminated property that's landlocked.
You wouldn't have moved through with it?
I would like to know what we're buying. I don't know what we're buying. You should really know what you're buying before you buy it, particularly
Or
with
enter
money
into
that's not
any
yours.
agreement, quite frankly, like this one.
I beg your pardon?
No, you just proved a point from before, but thank you.
And we're landlocked with the railroad, and we're gonna make it part of Kennedy Park. Are we gonna make provisions that people don't, that's an active railroad, by the way, that people aren't near that track, children?
Would you
All right,
prefer that it not be purchased, Mr. Rittenhouse?
What?
Would you prefer that it not be purchased?
Not until we find out whether it's polluted. Talking about pollution and dirt, because you're so concerned about it, but nobody's done anything with the Fulton's Landing the mayor asked that a cease and desist and also that some testing be done on the Fulton Landing process. Was any of that done?
Through the redevelopment agency, I believe we have an agreement through CME. Is that correct, Mr. Cornell? That we received some notification regarding CME now being able to look into that because it is a redevelopment plan. I believe we received that in writing, not at our previous Sarah meeting, but at the one prior to that.
I believe we put the property owner on notice, the fact that the borough has now approved the redevelopment plan, so he may have been exempt from borough ordinances in the past. Now we felt that he was required to go through and comply with borough ordinances so that he should become familiar with them and comply. But at this point, I don't believe he's bringing any soil onto the property.
Thank you, Jay.
No, that stopped when I filed an OPRA request with the DEP.
So the
with
answer to your
borough.
question, yes, Mr. Rittenhouse.
No, it's not.
Well,
Nothing's
no,
been
there's
done.
been some things done,
But nothing
obviously.
has been done to test it. And I was up here and I mentioned it before. You've got residents who were here where their water table has changed, there's stuff going into their basement. Birch Creek is polluted, not from the Mako property, but from the chemical plant that was next to it, running into Birch Creek, which is on the Mako property, which runs behind the Main Street townhomes. With this weather, that water has been coming up to 3 of the blocks in Main Street townhomes. We don't know how contaminated, and I was told by the Freehold Soil Conservation District that it was contaminated going into Birch Creek. So far, the borough has not gone on, and even when Mr. DuPont and CME said, no, they're not allowed to go on the property, the Mining Act, which throws that curve into this, says that the borough can go on, and if they find something wrong with it, they're to refer it to the appropriate agencies. The borough has not done that.
Mr. Cornell, isn't that what you just stated? Was now, CME now stating that they have to comply? That the Mining Act is no longer something that they can hide behind?
Correct. The property owner has to comply with borough ordinances if he is going to bring material onto the property.
Thank you.
Then the question is, did the borough go out? And the other thing I'm concerned with is the dirty dirt report that the State Commission on Investigation gave and mentioned Marlboro, where the borough questioned something being dumped on somebody's property, and CME and the Freehold Soil Conservation District went and tested the soil, which is what I've been asking about for 2 years. But now, and CME has said, we don't test soil. Freehold Soil Conservation District, we don't test soil. The Workforce and Labor Department, we don't test soil. Nobody tests soil. DEP has not answered me and has not responded to OPRA requests. So we could have residents of Main Street townhomes being poisoned, and even Mr. Lair, who was here, said he didn't care about the poisoned soil. All he cared about was the planning board making a recommendation. So obviously, with all the concern before I heard about testing soil and residents and pollution, you as a council have done nothing for Main Street townhomes. And when you had people here concerned about it, you've had the documentation, And unfortunately, so you really don't care about the pollution unless it's something that benefits you. Thank you.
Excuse me. I'm sorry, Mr. Rittenhouse, I did have a question. You point the finger at us in reference to the Mako property redevelopment. I believe that the mayor also signed that very same ordinance allowing for the redevelopment property to actually go through. No veto, no changes, no anything.
That is
He
correct.
signed off on that document in its entirety, exactly the way it was written as well.
And who voted for it?
He signed it.
There were
He
five.
agreed
Who
to.
voted for it?
You're right, we did.
Yes, thank
It's,
you.
no, that's clear.
The 5 votes, we can count. 5
Yes,
votes,
but
5
the-
to nothing.
But I would be curious as to
You
why the
had one
mayor,
councilman who wanted changes.
but it was 5-1.
Dan?
The resolution that finalized it was 5 to nothing. Dan wasn't here.
In the final vote.
He wasn't
Mr.
here on
Buchanan
July
wasn't here.
10th.
Yeah,
And,
he-
right, and that's when the resolution, the final
And
resolution
the, and the
had to
mayor
be
signed
done.
it, and the mayor signed it.
Right, but that was a 5 to nothing vote, not the 5 to 1. While I'm back here, I'm sorry. Finances. The Shade Tree, and now I'm as the Shade Tree Commissioner. Shade Tree Commission has asked for 2 years to get, on a monthly basis, the tree bank and the financial reports. We also asked our liaison, who happened to be Ms. Kilpatrick, the one meeting she was at. We still are
more
not
than one.
getting those on a monthly meeting, at a monthly basis.
Denise, would you see that they get it on a monthly basis?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim?
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody tell me, with respect to the 40 acres that Mr. Mako owns behind Kennedy Park, what is that zone? Mr. Cornell, do you know?
Prime.
Pardon
Prime
me?
zone.
That
Prime.
zone prime, is it not?
Yes.
Would prime allow a transit village?
It's not a permitted use in that zone.
It's
They have
not
to get a
permitted
use
use.
variance.
As the author of the prime ordinance, I will tell you that a transit village is not a permitted use on those 40 acres. And those 40 acres were zoned prime back in the 80s for that reason, to ensure that it could not be a transit village. That's what the planning board did back in the 80s, when we created the prime zone. So people just ought to know that when we're talking about what might go there. That might be the figment of somebody's imagination, but it's not.
Can you explain what the acronym PRIME means?
Oh, boy. Public, recreational, institutional, municipal, and educational.
Thank you.
So it means parkland, it means a YMCA, it means the Board of Education property. P-R-I-M-E.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, that's as much as I remember. Now, let me ask you, Mr. Cornell, with respect to the 2.3 acres of prime property that we're buying from Kaplan, what did the phase 1 on that say?
It's a 4.5 acre.
4.5 acres.
The phase 1 indicated that there were some potential areas of concern.
Okay. And did it indicate what they were?
It had to do with historic fill on the property and possibly some contamination potentially caused by the adjacent railroad.
Okay. But nothing more than that? And there was no phase 2 done?
That's typically what a phase 1 would just identify potential problems. Phase 2 is more detailed analysis, and there was not a phase 2 done.
Okay, all right. And did it indicate what the problem might be? Or just that some soil that may have actually come from Kennedy Park
Based
might
on
have
a-
been dumped there, right?
based
Is
on
it
based on
possible that when Kennedy Park was constructed, that soil from Kennedy Park was put over on this property?
I don't know that. Just, phase 1 is based upon just a visual observation of potential
Okay.
problems on the property.
Okay, but it's entirely possible that whatever soil was dumped there was dumped when Kennedy Park was constructed. So it's entirely possible that if there is any contamination there, that's the same land that is in Kennedy Park. I just wanted to clarify that. And were the same concerns about pollution and contaminated land expressed where we're going to be building these apartments on Ernston Road, for instance? Did anybody express a concern about whether or not that land is contaminated, where people will be living? Anybody express a concern about that?
It's my
Or
understanding.
the K
that-
property over by the NL site, where affordable housing will, or where housing will be built?
It's my understanding, I think that whenever there's a residential component being built, that they have to meet with environmental standards for residential
that,
build
okay.
versus if
Okay.
it was industrial or something else.
But I never heard any concern expressed by the mayor or anyone else about that, or on the K property on Ernston Road, where he's building. This is the only time I've heard this concern. It certainly ought to be investigated, but just wanted to set the record straight with respect to the 40 acres and what it is zoned, and possible pollution or contamination that might be there or might be the figment of an active imagination. All right, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Being no other questions, I'll entertain a motion.
Move the public portion be closed. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor? Opposed? We'll take a 5-minute recess. Is there anything worthwhile on this?
What's that?
Hey, Terry, would you put on their website tomorrow that that the Little League is hosting the state championship games, I think, either tomorrow, no. Well, you know what, call Jeff Bertrand.
he said something
send him
about
an email.
maybe-
and that's- Who do you know in the Little League? You must know people in the Little League. He's still involved. All right, and just ask him,
Oh, wow. Yes.
Come on.
I do 7:30, so usually there's people in the audience that'll come up.
yeah, what do you, tell him that I wanted to post it on the cable channel
Yeah, it's the same usual crowd.
and so,
You get the rest of the day. Go to- That's something. I didn't realize that she followed up like that.
something like 10 o'clock. I think I'm gonna bow out of this. Oh, my God. Hey, Mary. Mary. Come on. Oh, yeah. I have to I get up a little bit before.
I'll got you.
There's not a lot on it. so.
Yeah, okay, I appreciate it.
And now that I'm done. Yeah.
You know, I'm kind of ignorant to the fact that I didn't even realize that was still the first meeting.
Okay.
So my apologies
Seriously,
are
Fred.
even worse. I'm seriously
Are
so
you
sorry.
serious?
Well,
I just wanted to turn around and say, Fred, shut the fuck! Just stop, Fred!
Yeah, I came out of the meeting that I was in, and I walked in, and I'm like, okay. I did not realize we were still in the first meeting. So,
Now you have to stay.
no, I can't. So,
Dave, you should get the bond on the next meeting, right?
We have to get together.
yeah, I was gonna say, how about?
Because you don't
how
want to
about,
hang
like,
around for the agenda.
I usually do, but
Yeah.
tonight I can't.
It's late.
If you wanted like do some coffee one night, I'd love to talk about it.
Yeah, I would really love to explain how that we usually do these things, so.
So I'll hit you up and then we can.
You got my, let me give you my phone. Oh, did you get a copy of this just so you can read it?
No, I'm gonna take it. with
Please
me.
take one.
Yeah. And you know, I never close my ears to anything. I'm willing to listen to anything.
I'm trying not to give you something without ripping up the agenda. Oh, you got something? I'm ripping apart my agenda.
It's who I am. It's who I am. You know. We are very much so. No, that's why. Without a doubt. You know.
There you go.
And to be quite honest with you, there's a mutual respect regardless.
I'm right back at you.
That's my cell phone number.
I've said cell phone number.
Thank you.
If you ever want to contact me, just Facebook message me.
Yeah, no, dude, totally.
I'm telling you, you and I one day should go out and see how many people left our website.
Seriously. I mean, it's just,
Mary's here, but.
I have the best intentions, just not always the best.
Florida? Were you in Florida?
Whatever.
Where's our attorney?
Hopefully everybody understands. Like, try to remain respectful.
I always try and say respectfully, may I ask?
We'll start the meeting with just the pledge.
Wait a minute, you're leaving?
I have to leave.
Ready? Denise? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay.
You have to read the publication.
Take notice that this agenda session, meeting of the Mayor and Borough Council being held on the 22nd day of July 2019 has been advertised and posted in accordance with Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975.
Roll call?
Councilpersons Buchanan, Delina.
Here.
Enriquez.
Here.
Patrick. McGill. Novak.
Yeah.
Thank you, thank you.
Everything on here except for the one we tabled?
Correct.
Anybody have any problems?
No.
No, we're good.
Okay. Administration and Finance, Councilman McGill.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor. It's the same thing. Mayor.
It is. Minutes and departmental reports. Move the following minutes and reports be received and filed. Number one, municipal clerk's monthly report for the month of June 2019. Number two, CFO's investment activity report for the month of June 2019.
Second.
B, applications for bingo raffle licenses received from the following organizations. Number one, Our Lady of Victories, and number two, Our Lady of Victory, I forget the dates on these then, on November 9th, 2019, and October 2nd, 2019.
Anybody have a problem?
No.
Now, before I issue progress, I would like to say that I want to move forward now on the park benches and see how we can move that along. And I've come up with another idea, or others have too. I've noticed in certain communities around New Jersey, under overpasses, they are painting Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, schools, patriotic scenes. And I think we ought to approach the Boys and Girl Scouts and possibly probably some pretty darn good art students over at, say, the War Memorial. And we can put something together for the overpasses. I think it would look pretty ding-dong nice, you know?
Yeah, that's
That sounds like a great idea.
Can't believe I said ding-dong.
Dan, do you think you could see if Elise would want to be put in charge of that? Because she's really good with
Well, there you-
that.
When do you want her to do that?
But I really do, I think.
If
it would
not,
be
we
a-
can just, I think it's a great idea, but it's got to be something that's organized, and she's,
Definitely
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good.
I think it's a great idea. I think it's our time here in this town. Come on, the borough, we're that little snapshot of real America here. We got to keep it that way.
Yep. we got to point out that just how important.
Well, in that progress.
With those benches, Dave, maybe we can put it out on the website about the ability to adopt a bench, the way that we talked about.
Oh, yes,
with the
yes,
placard,
definitely,
Since
definitely.
you mentioned that moving forward. I know they're installed. Several of them have gone in.
Yeah, and because I'm going to jump in on one, too.
Yes.
We still need about
Both for
20.
veterans, family, heroes from town. You know, it's a way of opening up your heart, and you only have to open up your pocketbook a little. That's all.
Gotcha.
And you'll be remembered for a long time. Okay, planning and zoning, Councilman Delina.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor.
Mary. Planning zoning minutes, departmental reports. I move the following minutes be received in files numbers 1 through 3.
Second.
Being notice of adjacent municipality property owner, number 1, remedial permit issued to Sunoco Service Station, receive and file.
Second.
2, notice of hearing before zoning board on July 24th for applications for Brian Avery and Shauna McManus and K Land 59 LLC, receive and file.
Second.
Notice of hearing held before the planning board on July 17th for the Place at Sayreville LLC, receive and file.
Second.
C, application for temporary trailer license received from Farino and Sons, approve or deny.
Anybody have a problem? Okay.
All right. D, request received for Sabert Corporation to refund escrow accounts, refer to the borough engineer. Jay?
Okay.
We'll speak with your finance officer, look at that, and make a recommendation.
Perfect, thank you. Request received from Gillette Towers, the release of standby letters, approve or deny.
Anybody have a problem? Jay? Would you have any information on
This is
that?
just a transfer of bond. They have an existing bond, the developer was sold, not a new developer posted bonds to replace it, so.
Okay.
No problems.
You already have borough attorney's approval, and I just need to do a resolution.
Okay. That'll be at the next meeting? Okay.
Other than that, progress.
Thank you. Public Works, Councilwoman Novak. Under A, minutes and departmental reports, 1 and 2 be received and filed.
Second.
Other than that, we are making tremendous progress on the roads. It doesn't always look that way because there's still so much to do, but we have MacArthur that we're going to be doing. The rest of the streets off of Pulaski over there, I'm not going to list them all. And we're looking at some partial road repairs on several streets. And I want to thank everybody in Public Works that works so hard and the engineer's office that's always willing to help us. Other than that, progress. Recreation, Councilman Enriquez.
Thank you, Mayor.
Mayor.
Minutes and departmental reports, move the following minutes reports be received and filed. Recreation Director's report for the month of June 2019.
Second.
Application for a special event received from the following: Sayville Police Department to conduct a national night out on August 6, 2019 at Kennedy Park, waiving the required fees and bonds associated with use of Kennedy Park.
Anybody have a problem? Please, everybody come out. This is going to be a really, really nice event, and just pray for good weather.
That's not 100-degree weather. And that's it, Mayor.
Thank you. Water and Sewer, Councilwoman Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Mayor Mary. Novak. I have the Water and Sewers Director's Report for the month of June 2019 to receive and file.
Second.
And I have 2 things, both of which have to do with our veterans. First, I want to, before we forget about this, bring this to Mr. Dupont. The policy that we currently have regarding the street naming, using the veterans' names, I would like that moved to an ordinance. That way, we don't have to have this type of issue every single time we have a development coming into play. So if we could get that drafted and hopefully on the agenda for our next meeting. Okay, thank you. The second thing that I have is a suggestion. I'd like council input. I've been going to a couple of stores over the weekend, and one of the places that I went to, I pulled up into a parking spot, and very nicely displayed on the side of a building was actually a Wounded Warriors placard for parking for veterans, preferred parking for veterans. It's almost like a handicap placard, but it's specifically designated for veterans. And when I went onto the Wounded Warrior website, it's actually something that you can turn around and request that these signs be sent to you, and then we can turn around and actually affix them in places that we feel would be most appropriate. What I would be interested in doing, I'll authorize the borough administrator, if you so allow me, is to contact that Wounded Warrior program. It's an online site. I think one of the people that originally started with was 100 of these placards to be taken on by different companies and stores. I would like to see the initiative started here in the municipal buildings, like the library here. And maybe moving forward, it can be something that we encourage the store owners here in town to turn around and take one or two designated spots and affix that for our wounded warriors and our veterans that have returned home. So I really thought that it was a nice thing. It's actually a very nice sign, and I think it's a great initiative to do here.
I'm glad you picked up on that.
How do they associate, how do we know that this person is a wounded warrior?
Well, it's, I guess, a lot of people, they may have a handicap sticker. Right, but I have to be honest with you, if somebody, I mean, this has got to be a major trust thing. For somebody to turn around, I always find it appalling when somebody takes a handicap spot and they're not handicapped, but then to turn around now and apply that to a veteran, male or female, woman, I mean, you got to answer to God, in my opinion, if you're going to turn around and take the spots of handicapped people and/or veterans.
Ask me how you want to.
But I agree with you.
You wanted to clarify it in the ordinance.
You know what? How about I ask Mr. Frankel to look into that? The Wounded Warrior site, this is not something new. I'm not reinventing the wheel. So it's something that they've put forward. So there's a lot of guidelines on there on how to do it. And you can report back to us on what you find, and hopefully we can move forward with it.
Great idea.
Thank you very much. And that's all progress, Mayor. Thank you.
Who will take, okay, public safety, you're on there? Go.
I'm number 2.
Okay.
Minutes and departmental reports, number 1 through 2, receive and file. Firefighter application received from Noreen Diamond as a full-time member of Sayreville Engine 1, approve or deny.
Anybody have a problem? No. Okay.
C, letter of resignation was received from Robert Reed, receive and file.
Okay.
Notice of retirement received from Colette Solinsky from her position as municipal court administrator, receive and file. Request for annual block party received from the residents of Dunlop Drive to be held August 17, 2019, 10 a.m. to 11 p.m., approve or deny.
Anybody have a problem? All the paperwork in order? Cool.
I also did want to say before, we had a resident come up, Michelle Mayer, and she made a good point that we don't have a Vietnam veteran memorial in town, so I don't know what the proper steps or procedures would be to look into getting that built.
I think one of the first things we can do is reach out to.
I guess we'd also have to find a location as well, and obviously would keep them heavily involved. Then,
Once we
progress-
bring them in, maybe have them meet with our engineer or DPW about where we could potentially, what they like and where we could possibly put it.
Yep.
That would be great, some place visible.
Were you directing that to?
Maybe we have to reach out, maybe, do we want to have Dan reach out to the Veterans Alliance? Dan, you got a lot of work.
You got to write that down?
Other than that, progress again.
Thank you. Business Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Request received from Robert Downey to purchase borough-owned property known as Block 337, Lot 9, looking to extend existing lots for ease of maintenance of the property and agreed to a deed restriction so the property cannot be further subdivided.
Can I ask you where that is? I mean, lot and block don't help me. Jay, do you know?
The intersection of Warwick and Yorkshire. He bought a piece of property that was subdivided into 3 lots. Yeah, this was previously referred to your Open Space Committee. They did not recommend selling it, but I think now that there's a subdivision and Mr. Downey's proposing restrictions, you may want to send it back to them to take a look at.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Ask Open Space to look at it again. Because I remember they were concerned about giving it to him because he might try to build 2 houses on the property. That's why they said no to start with. But now that,
He's got an approved subdivision already, so this just adds to it and takes a maintenance issue away from you.
okay. Send that
Report
to,
open space?
yes, please.
Request received from Legacy Riding Stables to exercise their option to renew their concession contract with the borough for an additional 2-year term with the same concession fee.
Anybody have a problem?
Authorization to submit 2019 annual plan for the following projects: MacArthur Avenue reconstruction, $207,000, $683. Literacy program, $2,500. Program administration, $15,000.
That's the one I was talking about earlier, where we were planning on using it in Tangletown because that was an area that we were allowed to. Well, for some reason, they've taken that away from us now, but they have put MacArthur Avenue into it. So that way, any money we had allotted for MacArthur, we can turn around and put over there, so. Sorry, go ahead.
No, fine. Replacing previous requests for authorization to purchase Dodge Durangos with a request for authorization to purchase two 2024 Escapes from Buyer Ford through ESCN Contract 17/18-21, an amount not to exceed $47,306.76. Recommendation for a dedicated handicapped parking spot received from Sergeant Brill for 53 Smullins.
We haven't received reports on this.
So can we carry that over, or?
Carry it again.
Okay. Authorization to appoint school traffic guards for the period of September 1st, 2019 through August 31st, 2020. Authorization to appoint a grant writer in an amount not to exceed $3,000 in order to pursue a grant in the amount of $100,000 to be used for utility light rescue through FEMA AFG. Authorization to call for a certified list of eligible candidates for police sergeant and lieutenant fill vacancy.
Anybody have a problem?
Bingo. Authorization to advertise the bids for the, I know, for the whole time, for the furnishing and installation of Unimac or equivalent washers and dryers. Oh, it's our. Authorization to purchase 7 Chevy Tahoe PPV and 1 2020 Chevy Tahoe SSV from the Mall Chevrolet ESCN Contract 17/18-44 in the amount not to exceed $299,010.
No problem?
Okay, authorization to purchase lights, sirens, and related accessories for new police vehicles from East Coast Emergency Lighting through NJ State Contract 17-Fleet 00761, 17-Fleet-00719, and 17-Fleet 0768, in the amount not to exceed $132,909.76.
Anybody got a problem? Okay.
Authorization to award contract to RJ Walsh through New Jersey Contract T-0849 A42268 to refurbish fuel tanks at the Public Safety Complex in an amount not to exceed $30,681.43.
Any problem?
Authorization to purchase leaf bags from Popco Industries through a non-fair and open contract, amount not to exceed $22,518.72.
Any problem?
Authorization to extend textile collection contract with American Recycling Technologies for a 2-year term.
Any problems?
Authorization to extend snow plowing and removal contract with B&W contract for 1 additional 2-year term.
Any problems?
Authorization to continue purchasing Ford parts and services from Tom's Ford of Keyport, New Jersey through NJPA Sourcewell Contract 061015-FMC.
Any problems?
Authorization design work for DPW garage extension by USA Architects in an amount not to exceed $20,000.
Okay. Is that good? Wait a minute. Is there a problem, Jay?
No, I think that their proposal was in a package. I thought that was the number.
Okay. Authorization,
I thought that was the correct number.
okay.
I thought their proposal was in your packet.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Okay. Authorization to purchase 1 2019 Ford F-250 from Buyer Ford through New Jersey State Contract T2100 88727, an amount not to exceed $27,528.
Anybody have a problem?
Authorization to combine all municipal fees, including special event and food handlers, into one general fee of $150 for all vendors for participation in Sayreville Day on September 14, 2019, and $50 for participation in the Blast from the Past car show on September 15, 2019, rain dates for the following weekend. This action does not eliminate the requirements for each vendor to obtain such necessary permits.
Anybody have any problems?
And authorization to advertise for the receipt of bids for the hydrated lime.
Any problems? No, okay.
Thank you,
You
Mayor.
done?
Yes, Mayor.
CFO? Nothing. Okay. Borough Engineer?
Thank you. 2 items. We received bids for the Dewhernal Well Field Maintenance Project. That's your annual maintenance project for that facility. At the present time, you do not have money in place, so if you want to move forward, you'd need to go through and adopt a bond ordinance. So if you agree, we'd ask Denise to proceed with having that prepared.
Anybody has a problem? Okay.
And this second item is the Main Street Improvement Project. Middlesex County is looking to move forward with the project between Brookside Avenue and Burnett, where they remove the old trolley tracks and redo the street. They're looking for a consenting resolution saying that the borough's in favor of the project. Your police department has already reviewed the traffic control plan. There's no objection, so we'd ask for a resolution at your next meeting.
Yes, please.
That's all I have. Thank you.
That's all? Okay, Borough Attorney.
Yes, only that at the next meeting, we'll have a tax abatement resolution on for the River Road 88-unit affordable housing projects together with the pilot, and that'll be on for a resolution of approval.
Okay, anybody else? Open it to the public for any and all? No? Okay, do I have a motion to close the public portion?
Second.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion we adjourn.
Love it. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you very much. Good job.
Okay, very good.
Who's that? Oh. Who is it? When, just now? Just now?
No, well, yeah, the one that we just looked at.
Yeah, yeah. All right, good night, Jay. Good seeing you again.